Hi, our friends. It is the second part of Dirty Blonde by Lisa Scottoline. We hope you liked the first part, so let's listen to this audiobook's second part. Like always, we are asking you to subscribe to those who haven't subscribed yet. Click on the like button, share this audio with your friends, and also comment on this audio story. Thank you for supporting our channel. And bundled up, people hurried this way in that their breaths making cotton puffs in the frigid air. Morning traffic clogged the narrow streets, stop and go, mostly business deliveries of this hour, and a white Liberty fish van honked, stalled by a UPS truck making a delivery. Kate lived only 6 blocks east of this neighborhood, and if Society Hill were the residential side of colonial Philadelphia, Old City had been the commercial, characterized by large industrial spaces that later proved perfect for restaurants, art galleries, lofts, photography studios, and furniture design showrooms, and evidently the Philadelphia production offices of attorneys at law. Kate stopped when she reached the address, only a black stenciled number 388 on a dented metal door, wedged between a closed restaurant and a wholesale restaurant supply outlet. She stepped back and looked up at the brick building. 2 stories above the restaurant supply outlet, fluorescent lights paneled the ceiling on the second floor. The storefront window bore no sign. The sign on the window of the 3rd floor read Tate & Son Industrial Drawing. The attorneys at law office had to be the 2nd floor, and in this brick sliver of a building, it couldn't be more than 1 room wide. Kate eyed the doorframe, dirty and peeling gray paint, home to 2 black buzzers recessed in grimy brass unlabeled. She hit the top button, assuming it was the 3rd floor, and the door buzzed loudly. She slipped inside into a tiny entrance room, then went upstairs and stopped at the 2nd floor, at a security door that read, Attorneys at Law. Kate knocked. No answer, but she knew Micah was inside from the phone call. She knocked again, and was about to kick the door down when it flew open. The office is closed, Micah said, flinging open the door. Then her expression changed to bewilderment. Judge Fanti? Yes, Kate answered, equally surprised. Micah had clearly been crying, her eyes wet and her nose swollen. The sight touched Kate until she reminded herself that this girl had been following her every move, or at least she knew. Whoa, this is so random. Micah quickly wiped the tear away. Her hair fell loosely to at her shoulders, and she wore a black ribbed sweater, tight jeans, and red Converse sneakers. He caught me at a bad time. I was just watching the press conference. I'm sorry, Kate said, pushing inside. I was in the neighborhood and I wanted to talk to you about Mr. Simone, to tell you personally how very sorry I am. Why, thanks. It's just so awful. Kate scanned the cramped reception area, furnished with a funky black leather couch, a black coffee table, a 1-cup coffee machine, and a dorm-sized refrigerator. Slick posters of the cast of Ennis at Law in the trademark black and red blanketed the walls. The reception room led to a room in the back from which came the sound of a television. Is the press conference still on? I don't think so, Micah answered, her voice thick. I heard some on the car radio. TV in there? Kate darted for the office, sizing it up in a glance, a huge plasma flat-screen TV, a black contemporary desk, a black Aran chair, and a white iBook surrounded by stacks of papers, labeled production schedules, travel and expenses, and headshots. Kate turned to Micah, who stood at the threshold, wiping her nose. I was hoping to catch the end of the conference. What do they say? Anything new? I guess you heard that Mars committed suicide. Yes, poor man. I don't feel sorry for him. He brought it on himself. The police say he used the same gun that was the murder weapon. So that means he killed Art, which I could have told. Micah blew her nose loudly, and her pretty cheeks turned red from the pressure. Maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but I really wish you hadn't said what you said that day. I think Art would be alive today if you hadn't. Kate felt a stab of guilt. I'm sorry. He was a great man, a genius. Micah dabbed at her eye with the Kleenex. I know they say that about everyone in Hollywood, but he really was. I'm so sorry. It's upsetting. It really is. And Micah's sentence trailed off as she watched the TV, and Kate turned to the life-size screen. A woman with a model's lovely features, long blonde hair, and a tight-fitting black pantsuit stood behind a lectern topped with a bouquet of microphones. The panel captioned under the picture read, Mrs. Erica Simone. Is that his wife? Kate asked needlessly, eyeing Micah for a reaction. Yes, she's Swedish. Micah kept her gaze riveted to the screen, her eyes glistening. If she were jealous of Simone's wife, it didn't show. So either she wasn't having an affair with her boss, or she was a really good actress. On the screen, Erica Simone was saying in a sexy Nordic accent, "I wish to thank the Philadelphia Police Department and particularly Detectives Nesbitt and Roots for their great work and the kindness they showed us. The city of brotherly love has truly been very good to my family, and I would like to donate $100,000. The reward money we had originally offered to the Widow and Orphans Fund. Thank you very much." "Now it's nice," Kate said, and Micah nodded, her lips tight. "Was that your idea? I didn't even know about it." Micah switched off the TV with a black remote and the room fell abruptly silent. "When's the funeral?" Kate asked, breaking the spell, and Micah dropped her Kleenex into the wastebasket beside the desk. "Saturday in LA, you get to go on the company jet?" Kate was guessing they had one. No, I'm not going. Erica wants to keep it small, I heard, so it's only immediate family." I can understand her not wanting to turn it into a big Hollywood funeral. That's so lame when people do that. Now it happens for you. It's a one-woman office, and the show must go on, of course. Micah nodded sadly. "It won't run as well as before, but there's a guy in LA who's going to executive produce." "What is it you do exactly for the show?" Kate tried to sound friendly. "Everything and anything, really. There's lots of little things that have to be done here, even though most of the show is filmed in LA. Like one time Art called me in a total panic." Micah smiled sadly. "I had to FedEx 10 cheese sticks to him from Pat's and Gino's, so the characters could talk about whether they like Pat's or Gino's better." Kate faked a laugh. "So you're the Philly expert, huh?" "Yes, I went to Girls High in the city and then Drexel. I'm not one of those suburban posers." "So anything he needs in Philly, you make sure he gets. If he needs somebody followed, do you do that too?" Micah smiled faded. "Like me, for example? Are you the one who followed me, or should I sue someone else?" Micah blinked, her long eyelashes still wet. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Kate shoved a hand into her purse, pulled out the folded chronology, and held it up high. "Recognize this? A professional detective didn't do it, and you're the only employee here." Kate slipped the paper back into her purse. "Well, Simone making a new TV show called Judges at Court. Like he testified on the stand, I'm just a production assistant judge. But you know what I'm talking about." Micah didn't reply, suddenly looking out the window at the view of brick nothing. "You followed me. You took notes on me, dates, times, men. You even took pictures from a car." Micah puckered her pretty lips. "How do you know this? Just answer me. Did you do it?" "I don't have to answer you. I have rights. You have to go." Micah strode to the door, but Kate stood rooted. "You're going to throw yourself out because I'm not leaving. You're trespassing. You have to. I'm asking you to leave. Make me call the cops right now." Kate gestured at the tiny cell phone on the desk. "Let's ask them if it's okay to stalk a federal judge. The legal department said it was legal, hence the name. But don't argue with a judge. Am I right or am I wrong on you? Listen, I'll make you a deal. Tell me what I need to know and I won't sue you." "How's that? You can't sue." Legal said. Micah frowned like a small child and Kate almost laughed. "I can always sue." "Didn't your lawsuit with Mars teach you that? Didn't he make your life miserable? Taking your time, costing some own a fortune." Micah began listening, her eyes widening. "Can you afford to be sued? What do you have it out? Your age? What are you? 30? So what? An apartment in Center City? A white Saturn with 2 years of payments. What do you have? Because legal fees will take it all from you, and that's if you win." Micah paused, walked back into the office, and sank into the air on the chair opposite the desk. "Good call," Kate said, crossing her arms. 19. "So how did it come about, you following me?" Kate asked. "How did Simone even know about me? I didn't meet him until trial. How do I know you'll keep the deal? Will you put it in writing?" "I give you my word." Kate ignored the irony. The girl had learned her lessons from Simone. "Now, how did Simone know about me? You have to promise not to tell anyone you heard it from me, too. I need this job, I promise. By the way, you're not telling me anything I won't find out in discovery." "Okay," Micah said reluctantly. "When you first got the case, you held a meeting or something with our lawyer, George Hartford. Some kind of meeting in your office. I had a pretrial conference with both counsel. It's standard, whatever." Micah brushed a dark tendril from her eye, recovering her composure. "After the meeting, George told Art about you. He said you had stark quality, which is like a 1950s term for hot, I think. Art had been thinking about expanding the franchise, so he asked me to see if George was right. I went and watched you in court, and we took—" Kate felt her teeth clenched. "You began to follow me. I had to. He told me to. It was my job. You invaded my privacy. I didn't think of it that way. How could you not? You were in public. It wasn't hidden. Just because something happens in public doesn't mean it's not private. You remember when the Challenger blew up in midair? Did you want to see those poor people watch their daughter explode? Micah looked blank and Kate realized she must have been in diapers at the time. How about the moment of someone's death? You want to see that? Even if it happens on a street or when you weep at Simone's funeral. Is that public or private? Or when you get married? Or hear someone say I love you for the first time? Kate heard herself getting worked up. The location doesn't make something public or private. Your heart does. It was research. No, it was my life. Kate shot back. And you found out stuff you didn't need to know, which is now going to be in a TV show all over TV screens, a new franchise for the Atlaw cult. My Life, Me. The show isn't about you. It's fictional. Me. Fictionalized. Kate raked her fingers through her hair, loose to her shoulders today. And they're going to make this show even though Simone is gone. Yes, Matt Gahan was hired to exec produce from LA. Kate made a mental note. When does production start? It's in production already. It started 2 months ago, December. Kate didn't get something. Then why did you keep following me? You were following me up to last week. I didn't know they'd started. Will you be the production assistant on the new show? Yes, I'm the Philly girl. More job, same pay. Resentment edged her tone, but Kate had her own problems. Where is it being produced? LA. Yes, it's too expensive to shoot here. We shoot exteriors in Philly next month. Is it called Judges at Court? Yes, just like the Law and Order franchise. When will it air? September next. Kate had plenty of time for an injunction, if she could get one. What's the show about? Micah hesitated. A woman judge. Federal? Yes, and 3 other judges on the court. In Philly? Yes. Are the characters based on the other judges on my court? Kate asked, appalled. She'd been so self-centered she hadn't even thought of that. Have you been following my colleagues too? No, Art thought they were boring. They are, God bless them. Okay, let's talk about the woman judge. Is she married? Single. Describe her. Kate folded her arms in the thick sheepskin coat. Or should I just look in the mirror? Well, yes. Micah smiled weakly. Only taller. Hollywood doesn't like shorter women like us. And don't tell me, let me guess. She sleeps around and no one knows. She has a secret sex life. Oh God, but she's good, Micah rushed to say. She's a good person, she's fun and cool. Like you, she's a strong heroine, she's empowered. Kate Mox shuddered. Make me anything but empowered. I hate empowered. Micah smiled for the first time. They haven't cast her yet. Did you really want Charlize Theron? Kate groaned. I was kidding. She sleeps with another judge on the court who's crazy about her. In the first episode, they have a threesome. Kate's eyes flew open. 3 judges? No, 2 and a male law clerk. Kate burst into laughter. Wait and miss the point. Oh God, I thought what I did was bad, but this'll make it look worse. I didn't think that was even possible. It's entertainment, Judge R. Kate had a terrible thought and sobered immediately. Met over a glane. Wait a minute. This judge doesn't have a best friend, does she? Well, yes, I mean she has to show that. Tell me about her friend. Kate felt new anger in her chest, and Micah must have seen it because she edged back in the chair. Well, to be honest, she's a lot like your friend. No. Kate thought quickly ahead. Warren. She doesn't have a kid, does she? She doesn't have a kid, does she? He's mildly retarded, but in the end, no, you can't do that. Kate shot up, her body rigid as a stake in the ground. You cannot do that. His mother didn't ask for this. He's a little boy. He didn't ask for this. It's not them. It's just characters. It is them. And all their friends will know. All the people on their street and all the kids in his preschool when he goes next year. You think he doesn't have it hard enough? Judge, maybe it won't help. You didn't do it to help. You did it to make money. I didn't do it. Even Micah looked upset. I'm sorry, that boy doesn't deserve this, to be exploited, to be put in the spotlight. His mother doesn't deserve this. They're just people living their lives. It's out of my hands, Judge. Micah was shaking her glossy head. Art really loved the little boy as a subplot. He's not a subplot, he's a child. Kate couldn't stand still anymore. She learned all she needed to know. It was going to be worse than she thought. Never mind the threesome. Gina and Warren, the people she loved most in the world. She felt stunned, stricken. She couldn't even speak. She went to the door. Judge, there's nothing you can do. Kate hurried for the door of the office, her stomach churning. What had she done? What had she caused? She ran out of the office and down the stairs and made it to the curb, panicky and sickened. She looked right and left, found an alley, and bolted for it. And inside the alley, with one hand on the dirty brick wall, Kate got sick to her stomach. Chapter 20. Kate drove down 5th Street in light traffic, heading back toward the courthouse, her emotions and tumult. A pack of Trident gum couldn't overcome the taste in her mouth. She would never have dreamed that she could have caused so much harm or set into motion a series of events that would hurt Gina and Warren. Their vulnerability upped the ante. She steered onto Market Street and, preoccupied, almost ran a red light. She had to keep that show off the air, and down and dirty legal research from a law clerk was only the beginning. She'd hire the best litigator in town, if not alive, and she'd wage the biggest, baddest court battle she could afford, which was plenty. Kate reached on the passenger seat for her purse and dug around for her cell phone. Ring? Suddenly, the cell rang in her bag. She fished the phone from her purse and checked the number on the lighted display. It was a number she didn't know, and the 215 area code. Funny? Almost nobody had her cell number. She pressed send to answer the call. Hello, Judge Fandy? It was a man on the line. This is Vector Security? Yes, Kate said, surprised. And by the end of the next sentence, she had swung the car completely around and hit the gas. Kate pulled up to the unwelcome sight of a police cruiser in her driveway. She parked behind it, turned off the ignition, and jumped out of her car, then hurried up her front steps in the cold, readying her keys to unlock the front door. But it swung wide, having been opened by a uniformed cop standing on the threshold of her house. His blue eyes peered businesslike from under the black patent bill of his cap. You the judge? He asked, his tone surprised. His build was short and stocky in a dark blue jacket, his gleaming badge worn under a black nameplate that read Officer Theodore Gilkenny. Yes? Kate stepped into the entrance hall, introduced herself, and extended a hand, and they shook his hand in a thick black leather glove. How did you get in? Through the gate in the back fence, then in through the back door the way they tried to. Kate groaned. Vector was her burglar alarm company. They had said the alarm on the back door had gone off. What did they take? Nothing. You looked out. Officer Gilkenny closed the door behind them. We figured they ran when the alarm went off. Did anybody see them? Or him? Don't know, we just got here. We don't usually kind of this for burglary, but if we have time, we'll check it out before we leave. Thanks. Kate glanced around, relieved to see the entrance hall and living room, looking untouched. It just seems strange. Society Hill is such a safe neighborhood. Come with me. Gilkenny turned and walked Kate down the hall as if she were a guest in her own home. It's safe, no judge. We walked through the entire house. No one's here. Kate shattered at the thought, as what had happened began to sink in. Someone had tried to break into her house. Dispatch told us you were a VIP. Said you have that case down the courthouse with the cop show, right? My wife watches that show, Law and Order, SVU, it's Attorneys at Law. My wife always calls it SVU, like the car. Yes, Kate had no idea why she was having this conversation, much less correcting him. They reached the kitchen where everything was in place. The granite counter is glistened, the cherry wood table shone, and the coffee pot sat drying upside down on a dishcloth, the way she'd left it this morning. The kitchen looks okay, Kate said, vaguely aware that she was comforting herself. She'd never been burglarized before, if you didn't count her divorce. I can't believe how many times a week they got that show on, Gilkenny continued, chatty. She walked ahead of the cop through the mudroom to the French doors in the back of the house. Gilkenny was saying that my mother, she lives in Tampa. She watches the reruns on cable, too. She misses that or back guy. She loved him. And Kodak, too. She loved Kodak. Oh, no, Kate said, when she saw the back door. The round knob hung loosely from its stem, and she reached automatically to shove it back in, then stopped. I guess if I touch it, I'll leave a fingerprint. Yeah, but we won't be dusting for prints. Not for burglary. It's not like on Law and Order. Besides, if we dust it for every burglary, this would be one dirty city. Gilkenny managed a tight smile, but Kate barely listened, looking out the mullioned window and catching the eye of another uniformed cop, a woman who was standing in her patio making notes on a white paper pad. She reached for the knob, which fell off into her hand. Oops, should have warned you. Kate slid the doorknob uselessly back into the hole, pulled the door open by the wood frame, and stepped outside onto the patio. Hello, officer, Kate said, squinting to read the nameplate on the cop's puffy navy jacket while her eyes adjusted. I'm Jill Wiedersheim. The woman cop grinned and extended a gloved hand. Morning, Judge. Pleasure to meet you. Nice house. Thanks. Kate looked past her, appraising the patio. Nothing had been disturbed. The gas barbecue was on the left, next to a table and 4 chairs protected from winter with green plastic covers. Flower beds lined the sunny back of the patio, now patches of frozen dirt and ice encased impatience. A wooden privacy fence surrounded the backyard and looked intact. The gate was even closed, probably by the cops themselves. Everything looks in order. How did they get in? It was a gate in the fence. Wiedersheim slid her notepad into her back pocket and gestured to the fence. That's about 6 feet high, correct? Yes. Should I put a lock on it? You can, but those coconuts will just jump it. Wiedersheim turned to the fence, bordering the back of the patio. There's no alley back there, and all the backyards on the street are connected. You share that with the back of our neighbor. Right? Yes, the Marcotts. They work during the day, but maybe somebody's home. Maybe they saw something. Well, check it out, Judge. Wiedersheim shrugged. Good thing you had your alarm on. You'd be surprised at a number of people that have them and don't use them. I bet. Kate still felt troubled, but kept it to herself. How often does something like this happen in this neighborhood? All the time. You just don't hear about it. We had a burglary on the Lancy Street last week. They got in through the back door there, too. Really? Kate was thinking about Russo, but she wasn't about to broach the subject with a member of the Philadelphia Police Department. I wonder if we could keep this with the Philly cops. We don't need to extend the jurisdiction, if you know what I mean. Officer Wiedersheim smiled. I'm not calling in the feds if that's what you mean. They turned this thing into a federal case. Yes, I don't want this blown out of proportion, Kate nodded. Then the visit from Russo would come out, and the videotape with Partridge. Come on, let's go in. Too cold to stand out here. Kate opened the door and Wiedersheim followed her inside, jiggling the broken knob. I have to go back to court, and I can't leave the house open like this. I guess I better get a locksmith right away. We designed Cockerhead. We can boat it up for you for the time being. Then reset the alarm and you'll be good to go. It'll take about 20 minutes tops. We'll have you back in court in no time. Gil Kenny nodded. You got me lumber. A couple of 2x4s? Kate brightened, getting the hang of the VIP thing. In the basement, I think. This way. She led them to the basement stairs off the kitchen. Officer Gil Kenny said, Judge, I'm not going to be here. Judge, what's Mariska Hargate really like? She's great, Kate called back. But that wasn't the detective she was thinking of. Chapter 21. An hour later, Kate was back in the car driving up Market Street to the courthouse. It was the noon rush hour and buses, cabs, and cars clogged Market Street. An immense brown and white draft horse trotted past, pulling a white-painted cart that held 2 tourists crazy enough to visit this time of year. Kate pulled out her cell phone, called information, and waited while the call connected. I'm a side division. A man answered. Detective Nesbitt, please. He's not in. Can I take a message? Kate wasn't taking no for an answer. Can you give me a cell phone? Sorry, I can't do that. This is Judge Kate Fenty. He's been working with me on the Simone case. It's very important that I speak with him. Hold on, Judge, the detective said, his voice warming. I think you still have the brass after the press conference. The line went dead, and Kate drummed her fingers on the smooth wooden steering wheel, idly watching the horse blow steamy breath from nostrils big as quarters, then shake his massive head, almost throwing off a straw hat that read Dave. Kate had ridden when she was little, mucking stalls at a local barn to pay for lessons. It wasn't a fancy barn, not where she lived. Barbed wire marked the grazing pasture, and the horses drank from an abandoned bathtub. She had loved riding, her mother watching, clapping. Judge, here's a cell number. The detective came back on, interrupting her thoughts. He ran off a number, and Kate thanked him before she hung up and pressed it in. After a few rings, Nesbitt's mechanical message started, and Kate left him a message with her cell number. Now where was I? Kate's head was spinning. The burglary, Russo, Gina, and Warren. It was triage, and she didn't know which wound to treat first. Graham. Kate flipped open the phone and put on a happy face, or at least voice. Hey, how are you? Fine, sorry I didn't get back to you. I just got in, actually. I was in Minneapolis visiting a client and my plane got rerouted. I spent the night in Denver. Sounds cold. Kate cruised forward when the light changed, approaching the glitzy new Constitution Center, shining metallic in the bright sunlight. Tourists in blaze-orange jackets thronged on the sidewalk, collecting like a mob of hunters. Business people hurried to and from lunch. Graham was saying, I see from the newspapers that all hell's broken loose with you. Suicides. What's going on? You don't know the half of it. Kate considered telling them about the break-in and then decided against it. Thanks again for the flowers. Glad you like them. Have dinner with me tonight so we can stop with the phone tag. Not another date, I hope. A younger man, like 3 years old? I babysit tonight. Kate drove forward, finally passing the courthouse, noting that there were only a few reporters. Funny we didn't earn a few bucks. Aren't the taxpayers paying you enough? It's my godchild. Oh, can you do it another night? I'm not free Friday. I got a late meeting. It's a long-standing gig. How about Saturday? Kate asked, her heart curiously leaping into her throat. She had taken strangers to bed with less trepidation. I think I'm asking you on a date. Prime time? You've never given me a Saturday night before. You've arrived, pal. Kate laughed and started Graham. What did I do right? Was it the bling? Tell me so I'll do it again. Calm yourself. Kate approached the security kiosk outside the parking garage and waved at the guard in the booth. Saturday at 8, then, Graham said, a new warmth in his voice. I have a party to go to that night. Give him by one of my best clients, which mind going as my date. I'd love it. I'll show you off. How about I pick you up at your house? Okay. Kate felt a twinge. She'd feel funny going home tonight. She gave him the address, hoping Nesbit would call back soon. Got that? See you then. I'm where that bracelet I gave you. I will. Kate drove down the ramp to the parking garage underneath the courthouse, then aimed her remote at the sensor and waited while the brown corrugated door lifted. You're not wearing it, I know. I am. Kate smiled to herself. The gold bracelet was peeking out from under the thick sleeve of her coat. But he didn't have to know that. See you Saturday, she said, and hung up. She pulled into the garage, checking the car's clock. 1:15. She was late. The parking lot was quiet and still, and she found her space and parked. She grabbed her phone and purse and juggled both to lock the car and call Matt on the cell. She couldn't remember his direct dial offhand, so she pressed in the main office number, hustling toward the locked door that led to the secured half of the courthouse. Speaker in heart again, said a woman's dignified voice when the call picked up, and Kate felt herself stiffen. It was Mrs. Pershing, the prim switchboard diva who'd been with Beaker since the Jurassic. Kate didn't even want to think about Mrs. Pershing knowing her business. Mrs. Pershing, it's Kate Fandy. Judge, my goodness, how have you been? I keep hearing so much about that case before you with all those movie stars, and that poor man who killed himself and so young. Yes, it's very sad. Kate fished for her keys in her purse, resting her hot cell phone in the crook of her neck. I hate to cut you off, but I'm kind of in a hurry, so could you? Judge, we're so proud of you here at Beaker. Tell me, did you meet Cleant? He's a favorite of mine. Clint Eastwood didn't have anything to do with this case, Mrs. Pershing. Kate finally found her key, shoved it into the lock, and twisted until she heard the telltale click. Would you connect me to Matt Sorion's office? She asked, just as she burst into the small lobby for the judge's elevator, where Jonathan Murden was waiting for an elevator, in a dark topcoat over his suit and reptile carrying a boxy briefcase. Damn, Kate never would have called Sorion if she'd known Murdon would overhear. She could feel him making a mental hatch mark in the Why Kate is a Bad Judge column for fraternizing with the bar. Mrs. Pershing was saying, Mr. Sorion is at lunch, Judge. She should be back soon. Please mention that I called. Thanks. What is this in reference to? Mrs. Pershing asked. By now, Kate answered, and hung up rather than go with, it's about my secret sex life. The elevator arrived and she stepped inside the cab behind Murden. They went to opposite corners of the cab, like boxers. She didn't want to speak to him, but she decided to be civil. Hi, Jonathan. Hello. Murden nodded as he hit the button for their floor. They both watched the orange elevator numbers change, with Kate thinking that lifetime tenure might be a long time not to stop the car. Her tenure might be a long time not to speak to a person. Can this marriage be saved? She asked, managing a smile. But Murden's mouth remained a flat line. What do you mean, Kate? It was a joke. Oh, they watched the elevator number turn to 7, their eyes heavenward. How's Sorian doing? Murden asked after a minute. Matt? I don't know. He and I go way back. He's before me next week. Murden paused. Do you see a lot of Matt? No, Kate answered just as the elevator reached their floor and the stainless steel door slid apart. She stepped off the elevator to the ringing of her cell phone. "Matt, aren't you going to get that?" "Not just yet." Kate opened the door to chambers. Inside, an alarmed Val was standing up at a desk on the phone. "Oh my God, I was just calling you Judge." Val's forehead was knitted with worry. Sam stood beside her, even paler than usual. "What's the matter?" Kate asked, entering. And before she could stop him, Murden slipped in behind her. Chapter 22. Kate walked into her office, stunned at the sight. Debris lay everywhere. Case files had been opened and scattered over her conference table. Papers and bound briefs littered her floor. Case books had been pulled from the bookshelves, and cardboard boxes she had yet to unpack had been upended, their contents strewn onto the blue rug. Kate thanked God she had kept the chronology with her in her purse. "What happened here?" Murden asked aghast. He hovered over Kate's shoulder, but she ignored him. She walked numbly to her desk and found all her drawers hanging open as if they'd been searched. Even her blue mug had been knocked over, spilling coffee onto her papers. Kate stood by her desk, still in her coat. "It's my fault, Judge Fenty." Val stepped forward, her brown patterned dress flowing around her. "I shouldn't have gone to lunch." "You're entitled to eat, Val." Kate remembered that Emily would still be at Jenkins. She turned to Sam. "Well, you here? Did you go after lunch?" "I'm really sorry, Judge." Sam. He was almost hyperventilating, and his forehead had taken on an unhappy sheen. I'm really sorry. I didn't think this would happen. I've been trying so hard to do better, and I'm so sorry." Murden interrupted. "This is a major security breach. Jonathan, I can handle it," Kate said, stepping closer to Sam, but Murden shook his head. "We need to call the FBI right now. This is an attack on a federal judge on federal property. Let me find out what happened first." Kate turned to Sam, feeling Murden's stare boring into her back. "Sam, slow down, take a breath, and explain to me what happened. No matter what I do, I screw up." "Breathe, Sam," Kate said, and the locklerkin hailed on command, his skinny chest heaving under his gray crewneck sweater. "Okay, well, everybody else was out, and I was working in my office. I heard the buzzer, so I came out to see what it was. And there was a man there on the monitor." Sam briefed again visibly. He pressed the intercom and identified himself as Detective Russo. "And I knew it was really him because I recognized him from the trial, so I thought I could let him in. I was sure it was okay to let him in. He's a detective." "Russo, it had to have been him, breaking into the house." Murden scoffed. "Did Detective Russo have an appointment?" "I don't think so. Never buzz anybody into chambers without an appointment, no matter who they are. That's a hard and fast rule, and Kate put a hand on the sleeve of Murden's cashmere coat. "I said I can handle my clerks." "Then when will you start?" "Exploded. They buzz anybody in. My chambers are on this floor too. That detective could as easily have ransacked my office as yours." "How do you know he didn't?" "Better go and check. I'll try to handle this without your guidance." "This is absurd." Murden turned and stalked to the door, then stopped when he reached Sam. "If you worked for me, you'd be on the street, son." Sam shook in his penny loafers. Val gasped, and Kate's emotions finally broke loose. "How dare you?" she shouted. "Get out of my chambers." Murden spun around, his split coattails flying, one chasing the other. "What did you say?" "I said get out of my chambers." "Now how distinctly uncollegial of you, Judge Fanny. You managed your clerks. I'll manage mine." Kate strode past him to her office door and held it open, even though it already was. "Goodbye." Murden stormed out of the office, and Kate slammed the door behind him. "That was fun," she said, brightening. She felt better, even standing amid the debris. It was the same feeling as when she'd said, "My courtroom," to Gina. She found herself grinning. Val said you shouldn't have done that, but way to go, she broke into a smile. "Thanks, Judge." Sam's best at hound eyes looked wet, and Kate felt for him. "Don't worry, Sam. Now let's get back to the story. Russo is in the hallway. You're not going to fire me?" "No." "Now tell me about letting Russo in. What did he say on the intercom?" "Just who he was." Sam wet his lips with a dry tongue, starting his story over. "Also, I let him because the chief judge had sent around a court mail this morning saying that the security threat had been lifted now that Mars was dead. And thirdly, I remembered that this morning when that other detective came here, Nesbit, I think his name was, that Val asked you if she could buzz him in, and you said, of course. You're right." "I said that." Kate slid out of her coat and placed it on her desk chair. "So I thought, of course, Detective Russo can come in too. I didn't know he'd do anything like this. He's law enforcement." Sam threw up his matchstick arms, bewildered. Quiz custody at Ipsos Custodies." "What?" "He's hysterical," Val said. Sam answered, evidently feeling more himself. The translation is "Who guards the guards?" The Roman poet Juvenal famously posed the question in the 1st century. But why did you let him wait in my office, Sam? Kate asked, mystified. After all, Juvenal wouldn't have. I didn't. He said that he needed to see you about your security. He said he'd only come back to chambers because you weren't on the bench, that you were supposed to be in court at 11:30. Okay, Kate said slowly. So Russo had checked the schedule downstairs. He said the security threat was from a man, an ex-convict, and he asked me if I'd ever seen the man in chambers or in your courtroom. He showed me a photo of the man. Sam pumped his head, his movement jerky. It was of the guy who fell off the balcony the other day. I remember that story from the news. Partridge with the videotape. He showed you a photo of him? Val asked Sam if the man was dead, how could he be a threat to the judge? Sam turned to her. The detective said the men worked with a gang and they were trying to kill her. Val's mouth dropped open. How could you believe that, Sam? That sounds crazy. And he shows up all by himself without the marshals. Kate raised a hand. Wait. Please, Val, we need to get the story. Sam, how did Russo get into my office from yours? He said he had to search chambers for wiretaps. Suite for wiretaps, he called it. He said that the man and his gang used wiretaps to find out about judges they were going to kill. Oh man, where did you go while he searched? Kate asked, trying to keep him on track. He said he had to search the clerk's office too. So he told me that I had to go out and come back in about half an hour. So I went down to the cafeteria and got lunch. Val's brown eyes flared. How could you leave him alone in chambers? He was a detective. Sam wailed, getting upset again. I thought he was okay. Okay, relax. Val, Judge, I'm really sorry. Please don't say anything, Judge. Word gets round and I still don't have an offer yet for next year. Don't worry. Kate walked to him, put a hand on his knobby shoulder and looked at Val. Did you call for marshals? Not yet. I was about to when you came in. Kate's gaze traveled back to the law clerk. Sam, don't speak to anyone about this. Please don't tell any of your friends in the other chambers. I don't have any friends in the other. Okay? Kate couldn't bear to hear it from him, too. Don't tell anyone. What about Emily when she comes back? Val will tell her. You can talk to her, of course, but don't either of you discuss it outside chambers? Kate ran a hand through her hair. Now go back to her office and leave Mummy and Daddy alone, okay? What? Go. Kate pointed at the door. Out. Sure, Judge. Sam turned and left the office, closing the door behind him. Kate said, somebody tried to break into my house this morning. I think it was Russo. Val's hand flew to her mouth. Are you for real? He's angry that I ruled against him. Best I can figure. It was partly true, and Kate would die if Val knew about the videotape. I already have a call into Detective Nesbitt. I can't believe it. Your house down Society Hill. He take anything? No, he didn't get in. Praise God. Wait, that way you went this morning? How'd you know your house was going to be broken into? Micah? No, I had something else to do. Then they called me in the car. I say Val mulled it over. Wow. So detective did this? Trying to make your life miserable? Seems like he's after you. Or looking for something in here. He didn't mess up my office or the clerks. I have no idea what he's looking for. I think he's just plain mad. Office rocker? Yep. He can't want to be a detective anymore. He just killed his career. Kate eyed the wreckage of her office. Russo had just broken the last barrier, and she didn't know if he could ever get back. He must have reacted strongly to Mars's suicide. He must blame me for it. I'm glad he didn't kill you or me or Sam. Save me the trouble of killing him my own self. An unlikely grin spread slowly across Val's face, and Kate burst into laughter, which felt unexpectedly good. Val said, I tell you, I've seen clerks come and go. Every year new ones. I've watched them get married and babies get divorced. But in all my years, I've never seen a stranger to as these. Each one's crazier than the other. Sam, he takes the cake. Nah, he just got scared. He got scared. Now I'm scared. You scared? Kate felt it too then. Honest? Yes. It's that safe round here all of a sudden. Val pursed her lips. I better tell the marshals and they'll tell the FBI. And the chief should send out another court mail about Russo this time. Oh, here we go. Kate didn't know how long she could keep a lid on that videotape. This was about to get public. There would be questions from the FBI. I bet Meriden on the phone to the chief as we speak. Probably on the cell on the way down the hall. Valt, that man is a jerk and he does not like you at all. All of a sudden, nobody does. Can't understand why. I like you. Val smiled warmly, and Kate smiled back. I like you too. Val turned on her heel, her dress swirling, then turned back. Judge, I almost forgot. You have a plea hearing at 2:30 this afternoon and a sentencing at 4:30. I should should cancel both. Kate groaned. No, I can't keep canceling these court dates. It backs up my docket and I'm on trial next week. In that product's case, keep the 4-3D. Mooring went a phone and Kate sprinted for her purse, which she'd left in the reception area. That better be Nesbit or Sorian or the cavalry. Chapter 23. Kate froze, standing in her ruined office, her phone at her ear. When Nesbit told her she was facing the window, so she remained facing the window, though she suddenly saw none of the view. Nesbit had said Judge Russo stole my case file on Simone. He has the record about you. Judge, you there? He really has the record. Yes. I kept the original in the file, the record of my, what had Nesbit called it only hours ago, personal whereabouts? Yes, I'm sorry. What about the pictures? Those two. Copies, not the originals. Kate tried to process it and couldn't. How did this happen? Come down to the roundhouse, Judge. We need to talk about it. Be there in 15 minutes. Kate let the phone snap closed. Kate had never been at the roundhouse before and couldn't ignore its seaminess. The lobby downstairs was a dark, empty space, reeking of cigarette smoke that blew in from the smokers in front of the building. Nesbit met her there, clamping a strong arm on hers and whisking her up a funny pod-like elevator to the homicide division. They passed a cramped waiting area with 2 black couches arranged facing each other against a wall that read wanted and was covered by rows of 8x10 glosses of scary, effectless faces. Then Kate was pressed through a swinging half door she'd seen in only the cheapest bars. This way, Judge, Nesbit said, and led her through a large, dim squad room that contained about 20 institutional gray desks stacked with files and arranged in no apparent order. Water-stained curtains hung unevenly, and on the right side of the room sat a row of puff file cabinets of different colors and sizes in grimy gray, black, tan, and even olive green, lined up like rotten teeth. Detectives and shirt sleeves talked on the phone at the desks, and one rather Daily News, his shiny loafers crossed on his desk. All of them pointedly ignored Kate and Nesbit. Come on in, Judge, Nesbit said, gesturing her into an office off the squad room. And at Kate's entrance, a tall, thin detective in a houndstooth stood up with a professional smile. Nesbit stepped in behind her. Judge, this is my sergeant, Marvin Schiller. Hello, Sergeant. Kate extended a hand across the desk, trying to act as dignified as possible. Both men knew her secret, and it felt lousy. She could only imagine the jokes they'd made before she got here. And she wondered how many of the other detectives in the squad room knew too. She forced herself to meet Schiller's eye as he shook her hand, and he almost crushed Booth in a large rough palm. She said quite a handshake. And impresses the chicks, Schiller grinned, showing unusually small teeth and a broad face. And nobody else, Nesbit added, and both men laughed. Thanks for coming, Judge. Sorry about the inconvenience. Schiller was about 55 years old, with wide-set blue eyes and bushy gray eyebrows that looked dyed to match his wavy gray hair, expensively layered. He had a large, doughy fighter's nose, and redness tinged his flat cheeks as if he'd just come in from outside. Oh yeah, of course. Call me Marvin. That's the nicest thing he's been called recently, Nesbit said. Then they laughed again. Can I get you some coffee, Judge? Ours is the worst. No, thanks, and I already make the worst. Please sit down. Schiller waved a large hand at the stiff chair across from his desk, and Kate took one seat, while Nesbit took the other. A synthetic American flag stood in the corner of the room, slightly askew in its gold stand, next to a 3-drawer set of file cabinets. Degrees and framed certificates hung on the scuffed walls. Schiller eased into his chair, which squeaked. Judge, I'll get right to the point. We have a problem with Frank Russo. Clearly, Kate told them what Russo had done to her house and office. So at this point, I'm afraid for my safety and that of my staff. Before we begin, you didn't call the FBI, did you? The marshals, well, if they haven't already. Kate had known it would be the first thing, Schiller asked. Everything was jurisdiction with the locals, and nobody wanted the FBI involved. Least of all Kate. I'm not that happy about it either, for obvious reasons. It makes our job harder, understood, and I would like to keep this as confined as possible. I assume everything we say in here is confidential. Goes without saying. Kate shifted forward on her uncomfortable chair. Now I understand that Russo stole the Simone file from Detective Nesbit, and I want to know how that happened and what we can do about it. Nesbit raised a hand, his good mood gone. I can explain, Judge. Most of the detectives keep the files in unlocked drawers, and it's nothing to go in and look through somebody else's cases. It happens all the time. I don't do that. Not for my high-profile cases, Because I don't want any leaks to the press. Your case file was under lock and key in my desk drawer. I keep the key on my keyring. Then how did Russo get it? At some point, he must have gotten a copy of the key or made one, and he took the file and walked out with it. The Upman swam go this morning. Upman? The detective who answers the phones at the front desk. We rotate and he's up, and the Upman didn't stop him? Why would he? He didn't know he had it, and he didn't know it wasn't Russo's file. All the files look the same. Didn't anyone see him get it from your drawer? No, and if they did, they wouldn't have thought it was all that strange. We used to be partners. That's how he knew where I kept sensitive cases. Kate felt her cheeks flushed with anger. Why did you keep it there if you knew Russo was interested? And the case was so sensitive. I mean, he was a key witness. He had a stake in winning. Judge, I'm sorry. Nesbit met her eye with regret. I made a mistake. I never thought Russo would go into that drawer without my permission, much less break in and take a file. It's unprecedented. Chiller at it, leaning forward. Unheard of for one detective to do that to another. I'm not joking around. I respect Nesbit more than I can say. He's the best on the squad and the most discreet. To tell you the truth, he's next in line for my job. Chiller nodded at Nesbit, and Kate could see he felt bad enough. But why did Russo do that? Why did he want the file so badly? Nesbit and Chiller exchanged glances. Then Nesbit said, "Our best guess is that he's been checking on the Simone file all along without my knowing after hours. It would be a way to keep tabs on the investigation because he knew I wouldn't tell him what was going on. Then, when the case was cleared and we were all out at the press conference, he took the file." Kate was confused. So then he's known about the record and me for a few days. No, Nesbit shook his head. Those records about you weren't in the file until today. I kept them at home because they weren't part of the investigation. Like I told you, I knew I wanted to show them to you. I even used my home copier to make the copies. This morning, after I left your office, I put the originals back in the file. Then I went to the press conference, and when I came back, it was gone. Chiller cleared his throat authoritatively. Judge, you can rest assured that I'm having internal affairs investigate the matter completely. Russo will be put on immediate suspension, and he will be discharged. I can promise you that. Kate almost laughed. What could Belvat do? He's off the reservation, isn't he? Breaking into my house, my chambers, violating state and federal laws. He's a Rottweiler off the leash. We do have procedure. Fire him if you want to, Sergeant, but I think he quit. I'm right, aren't I? Kate turned to Nesbit because she knew he'd give her a straight answer, and his mustache tilted down at the corners. Yes. Nesbit looked at Chiller, then back at Kate. Did you talk to Russo about Mars's suicide? Yes. He called me after I left your chambers. He'd heard it on the news, and he took it badly. He was upset. He really liked Mars. Does he blame me for the death? Yes. Nesbit checked with Chiller again. I tried to reach him after I saw the file was gone, but he wasn't answering his home or cell. I went to his apartment, and he wasn't there. His neighbor said he hasn't been home for days. My guess, it's since the verdict. What about Mars' wife? Did you try her? She hasn't seen him. I went over. That's where I was when you called this morning. I had turned the phone off because she's in mourning. Shiva and all. Would she tell you if she knew? I think so. Is Russo married? They broke up years ago. Does he have a girlfriend? Not that I know of. A kid at Penn State, and he hasn't heard from him in months. They were never that close. He lived with the mother. Kate Futter got tense, still raw from this morning. So where is he? We're looking for him. He's a fugitive. We'll find him. Chiller added firmly. Well, I'm by the end of business today, if I have to go out and drag him in myself. Nesbit shifted forward on his seat. I did hear from him one other time, which is what I wanted to talk to you about. At about 1 o'clock today, I assume that was after he had been to your office. Kate did a rough calculation. Yes, what did he say? He was angry. He had read the file, and he was claiming he found mistakes in my investigation. My assumptions, even the lab results, etc. Your investigation of what? Of Simone's murder. Isn't that over? Not for him. Russo doesn't think Mars killed Simone. Kate blinked. Mars shot himself with the murder weapon. Russo thinks the gun was planted. He's got some crazy new theory. Nesbit glanced at Chiller again, and Kate saw their expressions tense right before her. What? She asked after a minute. Why do you keep looking at each other? What's going on here? Chiller answered. Russo's new theory is that you killed Simone. What? Kate almost fell off the chair. Me? Why? Don't get upset, Judge, Chiller said, but it was too late. Are you crazy? This mad dog thinks I killed his friend? Kate turned wildly to Nesbit. What is going on? What did he say? Judge, Nesbit put up his palm. Don't worry, we'll get this under control. Russo's a hothead and he had a big shock with Mars's suicide. He'll calm down. Kate thought ahead, trying not to panic. Tell me what he said. Where is he getting these ideas? He saw the record of what you do at night. Okay, my personal whereabouts. Kate almost wasn't embarrassed anymore. Nothing like a true emergency to put things into perspective. And so he figured out that Simone was having you followed. I checked. So he remembered that Simone had said something on the witness stand about making a TV series of your life and that you didn't look too happy about it, even though you made a joke. Did that happen? Yes, but how does that make me a killer? Russo thinks that you had Simone killed to prevent him from making a TV show about you. A TV series that exposed your personal life. Kate gasped, but it came out like a hiccup. But I didn't kill Simone. Russo doesn't think Mars had it in him. He thinks you do. He doesn't even know me. This is crazy. It's not rational, Judge. How can he think I shot Simone? Didn't you say there was a videotape from the parking lot? And it shows Mars pulling the figure on the tape isn't clear. It's a short person in a baseball cap. We thought it was Mars, and the suicide confirms it. But Russo doesn't agree. I want to see it, Kate said. We can't. The only copy was in the file that Russo took. But if it's not Mars on the tape, who does Russo think it is? He thinks it's Partridge. Partridge? The man on the porn videotape. I know who Partridge is, but Kate cut her sentence short. Oh my God, he showed Partridge's photo to my law clerk because he thinks you hired Partridge to kill Simone. And that's why you were paying him that night on the tape. Just shut him up because he was blackmailing you. And on the tape, he threw the money back at you. It looked like you were paying him, and it wasn't enough. He said, you can't pay me, remember? Kate found herself rising from the chair as it dawned on her. She could see how Russo would think that. It made sense, but it was all wrong. This is a nightmare. This whole day, this week, it's a nightmare. Judge, please sit down. Kate felt suddenly restless, as if she had to move. Russo thinks I got away with the murder of his friend. That's why he's after me. He's trying to see what he can find out. He's investigating me for proof I was behind Simone's murder. He will calm down, Nesbit said, and Schiller stood up slowly. Obviously, he's having a hard time getting a grip on things, but he will in a day or two. I remember when he got divorced, he was a mess for a week. Then he was as good as new. I need protection, don't I? Not yet, Judge. Schiller rocked back and forth on his feet. Russo's a little nuts right now, but he'll come to his senses. He tried to break into my house. I have 2x4s for a back door. That's different from aggressing on you physically. He won't take it to that level. Can you guarantee that, Sergeant? Schiller nodded. Oh, please, Kate turned instead to Nesbit. What do you think? By the book? You need protection, he answered, his eyes frank, and Kate felt a tingle of true fear. Chapter 24. Kate opened the door to her chambers, immediately taken aback. Men in dark suits, FBI windbreakers, and even bulletproof vests clogged her reception room, spilling into her office along with personnel from the clerk's office, the circuit executive's office, and an array of federal marshals. They milled around, talking to each other and into walkie-talkies so loudly that they didn't hear Kate enter. "Vowel," she called out, and the secretary waved over their heads. Their faces turned toward Kate one by one, and everyone greeted her while she threaded her way to Vowel's desk. She thanked them and leaned over the divider. Vowel gestured her closer. "You ever see so many cops? They're playing CSI Philadelphia, you ask me. When they leaving? Soon, I hope. I don't know when I'm going to clean your office eyes. They don't want us to touch it while they're looking around, but I can't stay late tonight. I have choir." Vowel held up a business card with a tiny gold FBI seal. "Special Agent Mike Brady is the one in charge. You'll know him right away. He's the tallest one. And Chief Judge Sherman says call your rabbi when you can. That mean anything to you?" Yes, Kate smiled. "By the way, Mo said Meriton called Sherman 5 minutes before the police arrived. You said Meriton called Sherman 5 minutes before we did. So great school. But the funny thing is, Mo keeps losing his phone messages." Vowel's eyes glittered with ersatz evil, and Kate laughed. "Did the FBI talk to Sam?" "Yes, and so did the marshals, and Mike from the clerk's office, and Brad from the court executive's office. Oh boy, see okay? For a bowl of Jell-O, yes. Poor thing. Oh, Kate checked her watch. 4:10. I got to be on the bench in 5 minutes. Proceedings at 4:15. 4:30, Sam here? It's his case. No, it's Emily's and she's in her office. I'll buzz her. Vowel hit the intercom button on the telephone and picked up the receiver. The judge is here, Emily. Bring the case file and her robe. My robe? Good thinking. Kate rubbed her forehead. She had an Ettinson's last night running on bile and caffeine. She tried to collect herself as Vowel hung up the phone. You sure you don't want to cancel this proceeding? Nah, it's just a guilty plea. No, it isn't. Vowel frowned. Judge, we canceled the guilty plea. That was the one at 2:30. Yikes, what's this one, a sentencing? Uh-oh, Kate worried. Guilty pleas were easy, involving her asking a series of road questions, but a sentencing was something else entirely. She hoped that Emily had written a good bench memo. The summary for judges who are too busy with murder-suicides. Okay, we'll just have to see how it goes. Maybe it's an easy one. Vowel held out her hand. Give me your coat, Judge. Thanks. Kate slid out of her coat and passed it to Vowel. And your purse. Thanks again. Kate plopped her purse on top of the coat. Need a pad? Vowel handed Kate a fresh legal pad and a pen, which she accepted. How was the meeting with the police? I'll fill you in later. Expect a phone call from Specta Safe, a security company. Kate had called them from the car on the way in. I'm hiring us a bodyguard until they pick Russo up. For real? Vowel lifted an eyebrow. Yep, he's gonna sit on that couch and keep you safe. He should be here first thing tomorrow morning. They're gonna call you back with the details. Give them my personal American Express for the bill. Kate turned to her left as louder talking came from her office, and a basketball player in a suit made his way through the crowd toward her. She tried not to let her nerves show. Judge Vandy? The agent extended a huge hand, and Kate felt her squashed for the second time that day. Special Agent Brady, I know you need to speak with me, but I'm due on the bench. Judge, where are you? It was Emily on the right over the din. She emerged from the crowd with a file in a black robe. Yay! Right here, Kate hollered way too eagerly. On Kate's left, Special Agent Brady was saying, Judge, if you have a minute before you go on the bench, we can chat now. Simultaneously on her right, Emily was saying, Judge, we're good to go. Thanks, Em. Kate accepted the documents and robe, then turned to Special Agent Brady. You left your card with my secretary, and I'll call you when I get off the bench. First thing, hey girl, let's go, Kate said to Emily, juggling the papers to escape through the front door. A judge running from the law. What's wrong with this picture? Once they were safely outside, Kate slipped into her robe and they ducked inside the anteroom to the courtroom, where they could be alone. Kate asked, okay, what did you find out at Jenkins on the stalking issue? Judge, there's no case on point, so it's arguable either way. How so? Kate checked her frustration. Clerks always said things like this until they became lawyers and read the law the right way. They're clients. Your actions occurred in public, so they were entitled to follow you. It shades into harassment and stalking at some point, but the issue is your knowledge. The argument would go that you didn't know that you were being followed, so you weren't harassed by it. What about the TV show issue? If it's fiction and properly disclaimed, there's no liability. Damn. What about for private people, like friends of mine or their families? You didn't ask me about that. I never dreamed they'd stoop so low. Well, from your reading, does it turn on the fact that I'm a public figure? Emily frowned, stumped. That I'd have to check. Okay, good work. Kate would have to get Matt Sorry on the phone. She checked her watch, 4:25. We'll talk later. Let's go, she said, pushing open the courtroom door. All rise for the Honorable Kate Fatty. The courtroom deputy boomed. Kate entered the courtroom, whisked up the few stairs to the dais, and took her seat behind her desk. She skimmed the pleadings index while the courtroom settled down. After a minute, she raised her head and caught the courtroom deputy's secret wink, this time with a sympathetic smile. Good afternoon, ladies, Kate said at the sight of two female lawyers before her in identical dark suits like girl bookends. My things are changing, aren't they? The lawyers laughed only because they had to, and she checked the pleadings for the attorneys' names before she faced the assessment. She faced the Assistant United States Attorney on her right. And you are Jessica Connell? Jessica Conley, the AUSA corrected with an easy smile. She was a slim brunette with bright eyes. Sorry, Miss Conley. What brings the government here today? Kate asked, though usually when she said that, she already knew the answer. May it please the court. The government comes before you to fix a sentence for defendant Louis Dalma, who was convicted by a jury almost a year ago of conspiracy to distribute cocaine in violation of 21 U.S.C. Section 846 and use of a communication facility in furtherance of the conspiracy offense in violation of 21 U.S.C. Section 843b. Kate groaned inwardly. A sentencing in a drug case had become a morass since the Supreme Court's decision overturning the federal guidelines. Every district court in the country struggled with the new law, and now so would she, completely unprepared. She reached for her bench memo, but it wasn't on top. She shuffled through the pleadings and the other papers, but it wasn't there. She felt herself sweating under her robes. The delay in sentencing Mr. Dalma was due to his cooperation with the government in connection with the Danton Bonnet matter, in a series of cases being tried these past few months before Judge Dalzell with a jury. Oh boy, Kate knew none of this background and was hoping it didn't matter. She looked through her desk as casually as possible, but she couldn't find the bench memo. She started to signal to Emily, but was surprised to find her talking to a blonde male clerk sitting next to her. It was the law clerk that Sam had nicknamed Todd Hunter Preppington, one of Meredith's law clerks. What was he doing here in her courtroom? Eva Conley continued. The sentencing issue in this matter, which was tried before Your Honor ascended the bench, is complicated by the fact that the jury did not find the amount of narcotics attributable to defendant. They convicted him of conspiracy to distribute an unspecified amount of cocaine, a Scheduled II controlled substance. The government urges that it is permissible for the court to make a finding as to drug weight for sentencing purposes. Kate couldn't stop watching Meredith's law clerk. He was talking to Emily nonstop. Meredith couldn't come himself, so he sent his kid to spy. She hated that he'd seen what Russo had done to her office. He must have called the chief right after. The AUSA was saying, the government urges that the court can and should apply a base offense level of 32, which is the level applicable under the guidelines when 5 to 15 kilograms of cocaine are involved. The gallery was empty except for the defendant's side, where an older woman sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a Kleenex. She wore a torn black North Face jacket and blue stretch pants, and was flanked by younger women who could have been girlfriends or sisters because they'd been crying too. Around them, teenage boys, girls, and 2 children clustered like a forlorn collection of Hollow Street gold, sideways baseball caps, and Sean John sweatshirts. The sight brought Kate to her senses. This was the most important day of their lives, and she wasn't even paying attention. Conley said the maximum statutory sentence for the Section 846 conviction would be 20 years or 240 months incarceration. 20 years. Kate felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at the defendant, Dalma. He couldn't have been 20 years old. He sat slumped in his olive green jumpsuit at counsel table, his face all dark eyes above a flat nose and a small mouth, his hair shaved to a fade on a head shaped like a mason jar with a fuzzy lid. A black script tattoo marred his neck. In addition, Section 841b1c provides that if any person commits such violation after a prior condition for a felony drug offense has become final, such persons shall be sentenced to a term of imprisonment of not more than 30 years. 30 years. But he's just a kid. Kate blurted out from the bench. The courtroom deputy looked up. Emily stopped talking and Meriden clerk sat riveted to the dais. Kate didn't care anymore. Did you say he had a prior conviction? He doesn't look old enough to have a prior conviction. The AUSA nodded, professionally hiding her surprise. It's in the record, Your Honor, and in our brief. Also in the pre-sentencing report, Mr. Dalma does have a prior conviction and the jury so found, as a matter of fact. Kate didn't know what to say. She was completely unprepared. She didn't know the facts. She was shaky on the law. She never felt more the imposter than she did at this very moment. Her gaze strayed to Dalma's mother, wet-eyed, looking up at her with a naked hope. The AUSA was saying, Your Honor, may I continue? No, Kate answered finally. Do you have another question, Your Honor? No, but thanks for asking. Kate found herself on her feet in the next moment, with all the faces in the courtroom turned up to her. Both lawyers, AUSA, and defense. Emily with her eyebrow pierces and the preppy. Dalma's dark lost gaze and his mother's eyes begging. Kate had never done this before, so she didn't know how it was done. She knew only that it had to be. Dalma deserved more than she was giving him today, and so did the government. Kate grabbed her gavel and banged it hard. Crack! The sound reverberated in the stunned and silent courtroom. The courtroom deputy rose, looking at her funny. "Judge," he asked, but Kate waved him off. "Ladies and gentlemen, please accept my apologies. With your kind permission, I'll have to adjourn court for the day." Kate faced AUS Connolly, whatever. "I'm very sorry. I know you worked hard to prepare for today, but we'll have to reschedule for as soon as possible." She turned to the defense lawyer whose name she hadn't gotten in the first place. "Please excuse me, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you." As if on cue, the courtroom deputy boomed, "Court is adjourned." Chapter 25. The sun was setting over the Schuylkill Expressway. Its remaining red rays reflecting on the cars stopped in front of the Mercedes. Their hoods lined up like the humpy shells of box turtles, moving just as slowly. Kate pressed the cell phone to her ear, noticing that all the drivers around her were yapping away on their phones too. When did everybody start driving on the cell phone? She never used to, but now she had a better excuse than most. If a cop stopped her, she hoped it wasn't Russo. "I'm honored that you would consider calling me Judge," Matt was saying, unusually respectful for an old friend. Kate hadn't kept in touch with many of her former partners, and this was why. "Of course, Matt, you're the best. It's very kind of you to say that, Judge. I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you until now. I was actually in court in Wilmington, a jury trial, or I would have called." "Matt, do you have to keep calling me Judge?" Kate hated the new deference in his tone, too. "We're old partners, pals. We were even associates together back in the day. And you became a judge, and all of your former partners like me are thrilled for you at Beaker. But Matt, you can still talk to me like it's me. I'm still me. Sorry, but I'm required to kiss your ass." Matt chuckled, but Kate didn't. "I ordered you not to. Maybe you should tell me how I can help you. You're driving, and I know I want you to get hurt." Kate gave in and told him a sanitized version of the story, leaving out the unidentified men part. It didn't help that Matt had her on a pedestal, and he didn't need to know everything to give her an answer. She wasn't telling the whole story, unless and until she had to, come hell or client confidentiality. "Judge, you want my opinion down and dirty. Yes, they're not liable to you for their TV show. It's fictional. If they run the disclaimer, if they change the names and some of the facts like the way you look and such, it's not actionable. Like a Romana Clay. That's what we're talking about, you see. A Jackie Collins book, only not as good." Kate fed the car some gas as traffic inched around the bend of the expressway, overlooking Boathouse Row. The decorative white lights that dotted the boathouses began to glow against a blueberry sky, but she avoided the prettiness of the scene and eyed the cars around her for Russo. She didn't know what kind of car he drove. She'd been too upset to see when he'd left her house. Her bodyguard wasn't reporting for duty until tomorrow morning, and she had driven with one eye on the rear view all the way from the courthouse, raising multitasking to an art form. Kate asked, "But what if they show everything about my life incorporated into the storyline? Like what, Judge?" Gulp. "Like private things you do in public? Like what? Where I go, for example." "That part's in public. Then it's kosher, and what do you care? You don't go anywhere you're ashamed of." Kate cringed. "Assume I do, Matt? Then what? You just assume I do?" Traffic broke up a little, and she cruised forward. The car in back of her was dark, but a woman was driving and on the cell phone. "Okay, let me think of a hypo. It's an interesting legal question in a way." Matt's tone gained a newly serious temper. "Let's say, for argument's sake, that you're having an affair with a married man. You go to his house to meet. Is that a good hypo?" "Yes," Kate said, though she'd never slept with a married man as far as she knew. Her husband had cheated on her, so she wouldn't even consider it. Even a slut has principles. Let's say the TV series shows you doing that, right? A judge having an affair with a married man. Something public, but something you wouldn't necessarily be proud of. Exactly. Lawful. Kate winced. She switched lanes to get to open road, feeling safer with fewer cars around her. It was getting darker by the minute. "Sorry, Judge. Listen, Matt changed the hypo. Forget about me. What about my friend? I have a best friend who has a kid with autism. What if they put her and her son in the TV show?" "Fair game." "Why?" Kate accelerated, trying not to crash into anything as she glanced behind her for Russo. "It's not them, it's characters like them. Women have friends, kids have autism. As long as it's not your actual friends who are private figures, and not a public figure like you, it's fictional and they can go with it." "I'm suing anyway." Kate hit the gas decisively. "I want a TRO to enjoy in production of the show. I want to complain for defamation, false light, invasion of privacy, the whole 9 yards right away." "I wouldn't advise that, Judge. You lose. In the end, maybe. In the meantime, I'll tie them up so badly they'll wish they were never born. They'll do the show anyway. There's money to be made, I'm sure. Maybe they won't end up making the show if I sue. If I make it expensive enough or get them bad enough press, then maybe they'll go away. Then your affair will become public. Kate didn't disabuse him. If they do a TV show, it becomes public anyway. It'll cost your fortune. I used to make what you do. I'm rich, Matt chuckled. Judge, look, you're angry. Very. I understand why you don't want this to happen now that you're on the bench, especially if it's harming people you love. But did you ever think that filing suit makes a bigger deal of it? Throws oil on the fire? Kate had thought about that. She checked the road behind her, which was full of trucks. If people didn't know it was you before, then they will after you filed suit. We couldn't get a seal on those papers. They might make it harder on you and your friends. Kate considered it. She was trying to keep an open mind. You still there? I hear you. Do your favor and sleep on it. If you still want to do it, call me. I'm out in the morning and in the afternoon. Matt paused and she could hear him flipping day planner pages. I'm on trial next week before Judge Meriton. I heard, obviously, don't say we spoke, of course not. He heard me leaving a message for you. He may ask you. Kate thought of that preppy brat who'd been in the courtroom today. Emily had said she had no idea why he was there. I'll say nothing, of course. So if you still want to do it, then we'll do it. And again, I'm honored that you called me judge. Above all, don't worry. All of us have something we'd rather not broadcast. Sewing over it may not be the best course. Thanks, Kate pressed end and hit the gas again. Chapter 26. It was dark by the time Kate reached the development, and she drove around Gina's block a few times just to make sure Russo wasn't following her. The townhouses, all painted light blue, stood 3 stories tall and were unusually narrow, stretching from the ground like fingers from a hand. Each townhouse had a short driveway and a uniformly fake colonial light beside every front door, illuminating a Ford, Dodge, or Honda minivan. She took a right turn onto Meadowbrook and drove down the street, satisfied she wasn't being followed. Russo wouldn't have to trail her to find her here anyway. The record he'd stolen would show that she spent every Monday and Thursday here since the surveillance had begun. Still, she scanned the parked car as she drove past out of an abundance of caution, and she didn't see anything amiss. She had hesitated about coming here tonight, but she knew Gina needed the break and wanted to talk to her anyway. Kate turned the car into Gina's driveway, parked behind her Pathfinder, then cut the ignition, grabbed her purse and the bag of Chinese takeout. She hoped that between her car and the front door, she would think of a way to tell her best friend in the world that she and her beloved son were about to be found. They sat in the warm, cozy kitchen across from each other. 2 old girlfriends nursing fresh brewed hazelnut coffee in tall glass mugs. White containers of chicken curry sat open on the tiny table, along with empty plastic tubs of egg drop soup, and a bright red foil bag covered with a snaky dragon which held leftover spare ribs. Warren sat quietly in his high chair, ignoring his cooling pasta and tapping his felt-rimmed mirror on his plastic tray. But his mood was common enough to permit Kate to tell Gina the whole story, uninterrupted and chronologically, from the break-in of her house to the dismal prospects for the restraining order. I am so sorry, Kate said after she had finally finished. She eyed her friend for a reaction. Gina sat slumped in the chair, almost sinking into her oversized sweatshirt, a soft old white one that read Fort Lauderdale above an embroidered pink and yellow sailboat. Her large round eyes looked a weary brown, their eyeliner smudged off, but her lips curved into her characteristic smile, which made Kate feel even worse. Gina, I feel awful about this. You shouldn't. It wasn't your fault. Yes, it was. You didn't know they were following you. Gina's voice was soft. If I didn't run around at night, they wouldn't have followed me in the first place. I would have been just another judge on the court, too boring to write about. No, they liked you from the pre-trial conference, remember? You're hot, you're sexy, you're camera ready. But I gave them something juicy when they started digging. And now you're caught up in it, and the baby. Kate felt her throat thickened, but she didn't want to cry. I would be furious if I were you. No, never. Not at you. Gina managed another smile, but Kate could see wetness come to her eyes, a sad sheen. I'm so sorry. You can yell at me. Go ahead. No, I admit I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm not mad at you. Gina bit her lower lip. I mean, what'll they do to me? My character, I mean. Will they make me do dumb things or make me look like a bad mother? Gina's voice went hoarse and Kate almost cried. Nobody could make you a bad mother. You're absolutely devoted to Warren and everybody knows that. You changed your whole life to be with him. You're a great mother. Not always. Gina tucked a strand of dark bangs into her paintbrush ponytail. It's hard sometimes. I hear moms staying home with normal kids and I think they have no idea how easy they have it. It's a long day with him. A really long day, I know. And that's why they can't make you look bad. Besides, you have to remember it's not you. People will know that, will tell people that. Your friends, his teachers, everybody. What if they make me into some sort of saint? Because the baby has autism. I'd hate that too. That's just another way of putting him down. Gina checked on Warren, her gaze shifting to the high chair and back again. 'Cause he's not so hard, really. And I love him. And he's a gift. A gift. I know that now. You know that too, Kate. Of course I do. I know that. I just don't want them to make the baby look bad. Gina kept biting her lip. I'd hate it if they, made him look really severe because he's not Gina. I know that it's politically incorrect to say, but he isn't so bad and he never arm flaps, and I think he'd be one of the higher functioning kids next year. Gina's sentence trailed off. It's just that he already gets teased so much, I don't want it to get worse. Kate understood, retard, tard, dummy, stupid. She'd witnessed it. Like today, we went to the pool at the Y and there was another kid about 4. And he wanted to play with him. And he kept yelling at him. But Warren wouldn't look at him. And the kid yelled, "What are you, deaf?" Gina tossed her head as if to shake it off. I remember when that was this diagnosis, don't you? Well, I hope that he was deaf. That would have been easy. Yes. Kate reached across the table and covered her friend's hand, the physical connection making palpable the pain. I am so very sorry. Did you ever think that this was meant to happen? No, absolutely not, but maybe it was, like Dr. Phil says. Gina, now with the Dr. Phil, Kate managed a weak smile. But it's true. You had a secret. You were running around and nobody knew it, not even me. Now it's about to come out. Gina shifted forward. The running around isn't the secret, Kate. It's just the behavior. What's your secret? I don't know. It's a secret. Kate chuckled, but Gina didn't. Think about it. Maybe you're supposed to figure it out. Maybe this is how. Everybody has a secret. You don't. I do too. What? Kate shot back, and the kitchen grew so quiet she thought Gina had stopped breathing. You never told me any secret? I know. Gina swallowed visibly. It's not the kind of secret you ever tell. What? Kate asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Sometimes when I got stressed out before he was diagnosed, I hit the baby. Kate blinked, shocked. I did that. Not often, but sometimes I hit his butt. I don't know if he felt it through the diaper. Gina stopped her sentence, then sat straighter. That's a lie. I know he did. He felt it because he cried. Gina's dark eyes filled. But that wasn't even the secret I figured out. Kate officially didn't want to know the secret. The secret was that I wished he had never been born. Kate's eyes widened. She felt it herself. Her eyes literally opened. See, I taught myself that. I used to dream about that. If he had never been born, that was my dream. I would still be married to Mike. I'd still be a successful lawyer. I'd have nice clothes and a place to wear them. I'd have a normal kid and he'd play lacrosse and go to Harvard, which would bankrupt me, and I still wouldn't mind. I'd live my dream. Kate thought about it. Gina, Russo had a dream and Mars. I hear all those people bitch about their college bills, and I want to say, do you know how lucky you are? Do you have any idea? Gina leaned forward in her chair, her tone turning angry. Then the need to show like desperate housewives. And I watch every week and think, you should come to my house, pal, you should come here. Kate didn't know what to say, and Gina eased back in her chair. And after a while, my dream changed, she said, her tone calmer. I was happy he was born. I understood why. What's your dream now? Gina thought a minute and smiled. My dream is that someday he'll say, I love you, Mommy. He will. Kate squeezed her hand. But Gina withdrew it and reached for her napkin. Wow, I never said that out loud. Friggin' Dr. Phil, Gina laughed. I'm confiscating your TV. Gina wiped her eyes, recovering. So, maybe you're meant to do the same thing, Kate. To know the secret. The secret I keep for myself? Kate made woo-woo fingers in the air. Go ahead, make fun. I have a better idea. Instead of figuring out my secret, I'll sue the bastards. I don't want a TV show about me, you or Warren. We don't need that. And I have the dough to fight it. I'll send Sori in to wage World War III. Beaker has the firepower to do it. Kate, I don't know if you should sue. Why? I want to. I don't have the money. I'm not sure I'll lose because I don't think it'll get to the merits. I'll make them give it up. I want to take a shot. But you have to think about it. Don't just react. When somebody hits you, you gotta hit back. Kate heard her mother in her own voice. But then all you have is a fist fight, Gina said, frowning like she used to when she practiced law. And Kate could see she was her old self analyzing a legal problem. You'll never get the TRO, and they could counterclaim. So there's that risk. They have tons of dough, way more than you. As a practical matter, it could make things worse for me and Warren. Why? Right now, nobody knows me or the baby. If you sue, making a big deal out of it, then they will. Gina nodded, thinking aloud. You'll get the heat. I mean, I can imagine there'll be newspaper articles once the series comes out, linking you as the judge in the case. But I don't think the press will be as interested in us unless you sue. You think? Kate recalled that Matt had said roughly the same thing, but she remained unconvinced. I mean, I know why you don't want a show about it, but what's right for you might be wrong for Warren and me. You can take the heat, but can he? Gina's expression was stricken, and they both knew the answer. I mean, I guess I'd be asking you to sacrifice your interests to his. Kate felt torn, but knew how that would have to come out. I'm sorry. You don't have to decide now, do you? Sorry, and said to sleep on it, so maybe you should. You're telling me to listen to my lawyer? The phone call probably cost you $1,000. Gina leaned forward again, shifting conversational gears. You know, the shell's not what I'm worrying about. I'm worrying about that crazy detective. I wish you had your body go out. I wish you had your bodyguard tonight. I know. I almost didn't come. Please, not for us, for you. It's you that Russo's after, and he's experienced enough to know how to strike when you're on your own. You should stay here tonight so you don't have to drive home in the dark. No, I'll be fine. Kate checked behind her automatically. She'd left the living room light off so she could peek through the curtains to the street without being seen. She'd checked 3 times until Gina yelled at her to stop. If you think you'll be fine, why do you keep checking the street? Just to be sure. Then Kate got an idea. Hey, it's trash night, right? Yes, why? Nothing. Kate was already on her feet, going to the sink and opening the base cabinet. Why are you stealing my trash? I want to scope things out, see if the coast is clear before I go. You get Warren ready for bed. Is this the babysitting part? Gina rose, going over to the baby who was sitting there. I didn't even get to go food shopping. I'll come back tomorrow night if you want. Better yet, I'll make my bodyguard do it. Maybe he'll be cute. All the celebrities date their bodyguards. Not happening. Kate yanked the white kitchen bag out of the plastic trash can and tied the red plastic drawstring, catching a whiff of discarded salmon skin. Guess where I'm going on Saturday night? Out with Graham, the stockbroker man. Really? That's great. Gina kissed Warren on the top of his head as she unlatched the fabric belt that held him in the high chair, and he had no reaction. See? Most kids with autism don't want to be touched at all, but Warren's not like that. He never was. He likes when I kiss his head. Kate felt a twinge. I should sue those jerks for sport. Don't you, buddy? Gina kissed Warren again, and he blinked, clutching his mirror. You like when I kiss your head, don't you? You're a great kid, you know that? She hoisted the child to her hip as Kate went to the threshold with the trash. Call the cops if I'm not back in 5 minutes, Gina frowned. That's not funny. I'm not kidding. Chapter 27. Kate stepped out into the bitter cold, and on contact, her breath became a chain smoker's fog, breathing her face. She held a coat close to her neck and carried the trash bag in her free hand. She walked down the front steps, head down as if she were watching her footing, but she kept sneaking looks at the cars parked along Meadowbrook. There were more now than when she had first come. People had arrived home from work and parked their second cars on the street, so it was bumper to bumper along the curb. Many of the cars were dark, but after a few looks to the left of Gina's house, Kate could see as far as 8 cars down in the bright purplish light cast by the streetlight. She scanned the far and near sides of the street. One each side, all 6 driver's seats were empty. Good. She walked down the driveway, alongside the Pathfinder and the Mercedes, making an apparent beeline for the dented steel trash can of the curb. When she reached it, she made a show of grabbing the metal handle, freezing in her bare hand, pulling off the lid and moving the white trash bags that were already inside, as if she were making room. The street looked quiet. Many of the cars were dark, but it was nighttime and there was no street light in that direction, so it was dimmer than the other side. If I were a bad guy, I'd park on the dark side. Kate stole a glance to the right side and dropped the trash bag in the can. She could only see 4 cars down on either side of the street because the street light faded at the perimeter. She was squinting past the 4th, making a fuss over closing the trash can lid, when she saw a sudden movement in one of the cars on the far side of the street. There. Kate tried not to panic. Had she seen it? Was it her imagination? It looked like a shadow in the car across the way, about 6 cars down on the edge of the light and shadow. The front door lights from the houses only generally illuminated the area. She faked a big deal of clanging the trash can lid around and fitting it on tightly, as if she were afraid of marauding raccoons, not scary detectives. She snuck another look at the 6th car, a shadow. It was there in the driver's seat. The car was dark. She tried to read the license plate, but it was too dark. It could be him. I'm out of here. Kate forced herself to walk slowly up the driveway to the front walk, then up the steps and inside the house. Her heart began to hammer, and she didn't take a breath until she got inside and locked the door behind her. The living room light was back on, and Gina was coming downstairs. He went down like a dream, she said happily, then stopped when she read Kate's expression. He's there? I swear I saw something. Kate tried not to panic her or herself. Don't get all Lucy and Ethel about it. What did you see? Where? In one of the cars. Kate pointed to the right. On the far side of the street, Gina's eyes flared. You're kidding, quick. Kate crossed to the table lamp and switched it off, plunging them both into darkness. You really think you saw something? I want to make sure. Kate went over to the window and moved aside the curtain, peering at the dark street. It was harder to see at a distance and in the parallax view, and she inched so close to the window she could feel the frost on her nose. What do you see? Gina came to her side, trying to look out too. I knew this would turn into Lucy and Ethel. It's inevitable. I'm counting. Kate counted the cars to the one where she thought she saw the shadow. 3, 4, 5, 6. There was a distinct shadow in the driver's seat, low in the seat, as if he were slouching down. She drew back, closed the curtain, and looked at Gina in the dark. Why would he park there? Ahead of the house? How can he watch the house with his back to it? Meadowbrook's one way. If he parks past the house, he can follow you out when you go. Right. Kate thought ahead. He must have come when they were having dinner or earlier and planted himself. He could have been there all afternoon, a crazy cop sitting in front of Gina's house. I shouldn't have come. I jeopardized you and the baby. I'm calling 911. Gina went for the phone on the end table, but Kate was getting another idea. Go, do it. Tell them who I am. That's working well lately. And say his name is Russo because the cops are looking for him. Dark blue car looks like a Ford. We can't see the plate. Kate dashed out of the living room and into the kitchen where the lights were still on. She hustled to the knife rack on the counter and pulled out the biggest, scariest knife she could find and ran back to the living room, hiding it behind her back, even in the dark. 263 Meadowbrook Road. Gina was saying into the phone. He's parked in the dark blue Ford, 6 cars up from my house, on the odd-numbered side of the street. Yes, that's right, Fenty. F-A-N-T-E, no, F-A-N. Maybe I don't have the cloud, I thought. Be right back. Kate opened the front door a crack and slipped outside. No, wait, where are you going? Kate shut the door and was already outside in the cold. She instantly dropped behind a shrub so he couldn't see her and bent over more, kicking off her pumps so they didn't make any noise. Crouching low, she scurried in bare feet around the front of the Mercedes to its far side, traveled low along the Pathfinder, then darted across the sidewalk and stopped behind the parked car. She prayed nobody would start walking their dogs as she crouched lower and dashed across the street, ripping the toes of her pantyhose on the street grime, her feet turning to ice. In 2 seconds, she was on the other side of the street, hiding behind the back of an SUV, breathing hard. Yikes, Kate covered her mouth so the breath fog wouldn't show. Then she waited, breathing as shallowly as possible, as low as possible, forcing herself to wait. It wouldn't take long for the cops to get here. They'd use the magic, a Funty name, so famous it had to be spelled twice. Kate waited and waited in the cold for the right moment. She couldn't be early, but she couldn't be late either. Now she braced herself, holding the knife at her side, then took off, sneaking around the filthy bumper of the SUV to the curb and climbing up alongside the parked cars. In the distance, she heard sirens. Too far away, wait. After another minute, she inched forward, making a hump of her back, trying to ignore her freezing feet. The sirens sounded closer, and Kate moved along the car. She hoped Russo wouldn't drive away. He wouldn't know the sirens were for him because she'd been so clever with her trash can show. The sirens got closer, and she moved forward to the fifth car, then waited. She moved along the length of the fifth car, creeping to the fourth. The sirens sounded only blocks away, and she could see curtains being pulled aside in the townhouses. Lights went on here and there. She inched to the third car, her heart almost leaping from her chest, her knees aching, her feet freezing. Hurry, hurry! The twin sirens sounded as if they were right at the development. The entrance was only 3 blocks from Meadowbrook. Kate prayed they wouldn't get lost. Suddenly, she heard a noise closer, only a car away, coming from the sixth car. Exhaust burst from its tailpipe, a chalky explosion almost in her face. Sirens blared in the next block. Russo was turning on the ignition. He was going to get away. Neighbors started coming out of their houses, curious. Sirens screamed louder than ever. White reversed lights on the sixth car blinked on, momentarily blinding. Now! Kate rushed the car from behind, coming out of her full crouch. Just as the lights blinked to red and the car started to go forward, she raised the big knife like a psycho killer, plunged it with all her might between the treads of the car's back tire, and yanked it out in one desperate motion. Pfft, smelly air sprayed from the tire hole. "You can't get away now, you bastard!" Kate shouted, springing up. The dark car moved forward only slowly, sinking in the back where she'd slashed the tire. 2 police cars sped onto Meadowbrook, tearing down the street, converging on the moving car from opposite directions. The cruisers slammed to a halt, blocking the hobbled car. Then all the cruiser doors popped open and patrol officers poured out on all sides, drawing their guns instantly on the dark car. "Phrase police!" They all shouted at once, adrenalinized, their bodies jittery shadows in the high beams of the idling cruisers. "That's him! Get him! Careful!" Kate almost cheered. Neighbors flowed from the townhouses and Gina ran to order. "Come on out, you won't get hurt." The cops kept shouting, "Take it easy." Hands in the air. They aimed their revolvers, 2-handed grips, on the dark car which was sinking in the middle of the street. Kate held her breath while the driver's side door opened, and she saw the backs of 2 hands rising in the night air. "Don't shoot, I'm a cop," came a shout from the dark car. "He's a crooked cop," Kate shouted back. "Watch out, he broke into my house, my office." Gina ran up to her side, panting. "He followed her here. He's crazy. Get out of the car, sir. Get out of the car," the cops shouted, their weapons trained. In the next second, Kate saw the back of a black watch cap emerge from the driver's seat, and 2 cops lowered their weapons and rushed him as a team, flipping him face down against the car, disarming him, wrenching his hands behind his back, then handcuffing him. "Stay calm, nice and easy," the other 2 cops shouted, their weapons still aimed on target. Against the car, the watch cap moved up to reveal a man looking at Kate. "Judge?" he asked in disbelief. Kate blinked, astounded. The driver wasn't Russo at all. Chapter 28. It was Nesbit, cuffed and in custody against the car. Kate gasped. "What are you doing here?" she shouted. "What do you think?" Nesbit shouted back as the cops tugged him toward the cruiser. Suddenly, Kate heard a sound of a car engine starting. Her head snapped around, and she spotted reverse lights on another dark car farther up the row. Russo. Who else would drive away in the middle of a scene like this? Nesbit saw it too. "No, wait, stop. You got the wrong guy," he called out, right before the cops shoved him into the back seat of the cruiser. "Officers, look up there. You got the wrong cop." Kate cried, pointing and hurrying off the curb, but the 2 cops in the nearer cruiser were slamming the door on Nesbit and jumping back inside. The 2 other cops were trying to get the neighbors to stay on the sidewalk away from the scene. Down the street, the car squealed out of the space and zoomed down Meadowbrook, almost hitting a group of residents. "Stop that car!" Kate cried and took off running. "Help, I have to catch that car." She kept running with the knife, a sight that sent neighbors fleeing in fear. She sprinted past them, her heavy coat flying, her bare feet killing her as she tore down the street. "I'm behind you," Gina called out, but Kate didn't look back. If she couldn't catch the car, she had to see the license plate. The car was dark and sleek. What kind was it? It was pulling away so fast she couldn't even read the plate. She picked up the pace to the end of the street, panting frantically and kept running even after it was futile. The car barreled through a stop sign, then swerved onto the main road past a minivan at speed and accelerated. Kate wished she had a gun, like on TV. But all she could do was watch helplessly as the car became two red lights in the distance, then disappeared. She threw the knife in frustration as it clattered on the cold asphalt. She bent over trying to catch her breath. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, but they looked like hell, red, pink, and cut up. She straightened when Gina caught up with her, and they both stood panting in the middle of the street like the out-of-shaped gals they were. Kate said between breaths, "I think I just made a big mistake." "You sure as hell did," Gina nodded, panting. "Go get my knife." Back in Center City, Philly, at the Criminal Justice Center, it took 2 hours, 4 phone calls from top police brass, and a signed statement from Kate to convince the uniformed cops not to arraign Detective Nesbitt. By that time, stringers listening to the police scanners had gotten wind of what had happened, and the press thronged outside the CJC. Kate and Nesbitt found themselves in one of the all-white attorney interview rooms, waiting for a go-ahead from uniformed cops before they could leave the building without being hassled. It was her first chance to apologize. "I really am sorry. I didn't realize it was you." She shifted in her heels. Her feet were killing her. "Don't worry about it." Nesbitt shoved his hands into the pockets of a brown bomber jacket, which he wore with jeans and old Nikes. "I wasn't taking any chances. I'd follow you home, but some wacky blonde gave me a flat. Ouch, sorry, I forgot. No sweat, it was my kid's car. Russo knows my car. He would have made me if I took my own." "So now your kid's mad at you?" "She's a college. If you don't tell, I won't." "Kate's a wacky blonde, huh?" "Yes, Your Honor. You should have seen yourself with that knife." Nesbitt took a hand out of his pocket and raised it in a bad imitation. "Nigella on roids." "Nigella? What kind of reference is that for a detective?" "Hey, I cook." "Well, I stab. Give me some credit. I killed that tire after the uniforms came down the street." "What was that about, rookie?" Nesbitt smiled and Kate gave him a shove, forgetting that Fett was a good friend, forgetting that federal judges weren't supposed to have fun. He laughed. "What were you thinking? Were you going to get Russo by yourself?" "I called for backup." Nesbitt's eyes flared. "Where'd you get called for backup? TV? I had to tell you this, but you're no David Caruso. You're not even the cold case girl, whatever her name is. I'm a professional, leave it to me." "Then how come you didn't see me sneak up on you, huh?" Kate laughed. "Busted? Never mind that. You took a risk. So did you. You're supposed to be by the book. I was by the book. I got you into the mess, and I'll get you out of it. That's number 1 in the book." Nesbitt faced her fully, no longer laughing, and brushed grain bangs from his forehead, revealing eyes that were a very steady blue, Kate saw for the first time. "If I hadn't taken the record about you from Simone's hotel room, it wouldn't have been in the file, and Russo wouldn't have known about it." In the next second, the door opened suddenly and Special Agent Brady came in. His expression animated when he saw Kate. "Dodge, Idar." Brady was followed by 3 other special agent types. "Sorry I'm late. I was meeting with Sergeant Schiller and Inspector Diddiness of the Roundhouse." Brady shook Kate's hand with vigor, then introduced her to the agents, filling the tiny room. She shook their hands and Brady said, "What a scare you had. I understand Detective Russo was following you." The question must have been rhetorical because Brady turned immediately to Nesbitt. "You Steve Nesbitt?" "Yes." Nesbitt extended a hand and Brady shook it quickly. "I met with your inspector and sergeant just now. They're not very happy with you tonight. None of them was aware that you were surveilling Judge Fenty." "That's right. I'm off duty. All blame goes to me." Kate blinked, surprised. Brady said there'll be plenty of it to go around. "He was trying to help," Kate interjected, feeling defensive for Nesbitt. "You can use me, Brady," Nesbitt said, his tone firm. "Jurisdiction, I know I can help. Russo was my partner, I know the most about him. I knew he'd be there tonight, and he was. I'm not going to stand here and argue with you, Detective. You're out, and we're in." Brady turned to Kate. "Your Honor, any threat to your health and well-being is within the Bureau's jurisdiction, not that of the Philadelphia police. With the recent attacks on the federal judiciary and the families, we're taking your case very seriously." "Why can't jurisdiction be concurrent?" Kate asked, annoyed. 2 heads are better than 1, and Detective Nesbitt's point about knowing that the law is not a good case, and Miss Smith's point about knowing Russo makes sense. With due respect, Judge doesn't work that way. The Bureau has more resources at its disposal and more experience with attacks on federal judges and officials. we're better able to protect you. Then where were you tonight? Kate shot back, and Nesbit hid a smile. Brady answered, "We would have been there, Judge, if you'd have given us the chance. I tried to speak with you before you went on the bench, but you declined. You said you'd call tonight, but you didn't. You'll find a message from me on your home and cell phones. Your secretary gave me both numbers." Oops, Kate had turned the phone off of Gina's out of habit. The sudden noise always bothered Warren. "We can't protect you if you don't cooperate with us, Judge." Brady turned to Nesbit. "I think we can take it from here, Detective. She needs protection tonight." Nesbit gestured at Kate. "He's not going to let it go. We'll protect her. We'll be outside her house and cars all night. End of discussion. I think it's time for you to go." Nesbit pursed his lips and touched Kate's coat. "Judge, no matter what these guys say, call me if you need anything." He brushed his bangs back, revealing another flash of blue. "I'll check in with you tomorrow." "Thanks, sorry about the tire, no sweat." Nesbit turned and walked out of the room, and Kate had an attack of separation anxiety. He'd put himself and his job in jeopardy to make sure she was safe. He wasn't a by-the-book guy, he was an above-the-call guy. An hour later, Kate had shed her coat, bag, shoes, suit, and underwear on the way to the bathroom, where she'd taken an endless bubble bath, washing the grime out of the cuts on her feet, then dried off and crawled into bed, feeling clean, exhausted, and reasonably safe. Before they let her enter the house, the FBI agents had scoured the place, checking her phone messages to make sure Russo hadn't called, and even reinforcing the back door with plywood. They sat, staked outside the house in cars, forgoing her offers of the warm house and vying with the press for the few parking spaces on the street. Kate put it all out of her mind and buried her face in the pillow. Her last waking thought of Nesbit. "Oh, I cook." Nesbit was also Kate's first waking thought, and she lay in her soft, warm bed trying to understand why. A detective with graying sideburns, deep crow's feet around his eyes, and a brown bomber jacket that fit too snugly around the waist. Hardly the kind of man she usually went for, much less woke up thinking about. She flopped over and became aware that the soles of her feet hurt, which made her remember last night. In the next instant, the phone was ringing. It must have been ringing before, too, waking her. She opened her eyes, her head muzzy. The room was still dark. It sounded like it was raining outside. She lifted her head and glanced at the clock. 5:45. She double-checked the clock, but she hadn't read it wrong. Who could be calling at this hour? It had to be the press. They'd left messages last night. She let it ring until voicemail picked up. But in the next instant, her cell phone started ringing beside the bed. The blue number is springing to life in the dark room. She checked the display. It was Gina. Kate's brain came alive. "Russo, Warren." "What's the matter?" Kate said, opening the phone. "Did you see the newspaper?" "No, I was asleep. I know it has the story about Russo last night." "That's not all. Go and get it." Chapter 29. Kate put on a coat to grab the newspaper from her front step, then slammed the front door, ignoring the press, collecting on the sidewalk outside her house. She didn't see any of the FBI agents, and she didn't care. It didn't matter now, nothing did. She slid the newspaper from his clear plastic sleeve, dotted with raindrops, and unfolded it, separating its soaked pink edges. Federal Judge Wheel's knife screamed the headline on the front page, and Kate read the story with dismay. It was all about last night, including eyewitness accounts of her running down Meadowbrook Drive, brandishing a knife, quote, on the apparent belief that she was being stalked, unquote. It made her sound ridiculous, but it was true. And at the bottom of the page was the related story. Federal Judge stars a new series, Fact or Fiction, You Be the Judge. Kate held her breath as the story reported that the offices of attorneys of law in Old City had confirmed that a new TV series titled Judges at Court was presently in production, starring an empowered-type female judge with a secret sex life. A representative of attorneys at law confirmed that the series would be completely fictional, despite the fact that the show's creator was recently sued in a case before Judge Kate Marie Fanti. The representative gave no further details except to say that the new show would bring approximately 1,568 new jobs to the city. As bad as the stories were, they weren't even close to the one that sent Gina into orbit. Kate turned to the Metro section and her mouth went dry. The photo showing her going into the Fort Washington bar was plastered on the top half. She sank to the entrance hall floor, barely able to read the column. Judge Kate Marie Fanti of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania has been very busy after hours, and she's not working overtime, she's dating. You may think this is none of our business or yours until you understand that several of her dates are men convicted of assault, battery, check forgery, and even violations of federal weapons laws. Now ask yourself, is this any way to run our legal system? We should note that our many calls to Judge Fanti's chambers went unanswered. Kate could only skim the sentences, as if to read the text thoroughly would be to absorb the full brunt of its impact. Like standing still in front of a speeding car. The piece contained every detail about the bars, all culled from the record and the stolen file. Russo must have found another way to hurt her the best way. He had leaked the entire record to the newspaper, and its reporters had taken it from there, putting two and two together and calling Mika just as Kate had, then digging deeper. The newspaper even identified 4 of the men she dated with their photos: Jeff Rader, Mark Buell, Mike Holloman, Mustafa Rahid. Kate closed her eyes, mortified. She remembered the men, though she hadn't known their last names or that they had criminal records. She'd gone to the sleaziest bars and picked up the sleaziest men. Why hadn't she thought of that? What else did she expect? Of course, some would be ex-cons, even felons. She turned back to one of the articles, an interview with one of the men who had served time for fraud and drug offenses. She picked me up at the bar. There wasn't a lot of conversation, if you follow. Kate felt as if her heart would break. She thought instantly of Graham. What would he say? How would he feel to know he was one of so many? How would he understand when Kate herself didn't? What did I do right? Was it the bling? Tell me, so I'll do it again. Kate thought of everyone she cared about reading the articles. Chief Judge Sherman, Val, Emily, Sam, the courtroom deputy, the stenographer, the other judges at her celebration dinner last summer, Matt Sorian, all of her old partners, Mrs. Pershing, switchboard diva, we're so proud of you. Kate thought of her enemies too. Meriden, how much would he love this? How could she hold her head up on the court? How had this gone so wrong? She couldn't shake the ominous feeling that her world was about to end. She felt herself sink to her knees and doubled over on her raised rug, feeling so much pain that not even a single tear would come. Her only overriding thought was to thank God that her mother did not live to see this day. In time, Kate got dressed in a black protest suit, ready for work earlier than usual, because she had to put her office back together after a hurricane, Russo. She slipped on a pair of huge sunglasses and felt as if she were running a modern-day gauntlet on the press, snapping her picture as she drove out of her garage, to Special Agent Brady at the end of the street in an unmarked car, to the security guard in the white kiosk at the judge's parking lot, to Judge Tom McGinn of the Third Circuit with his characteristic Santa Claus beard, who was getting out of his car at the same time as she was. The appellate court had its chambers on the penthouse floors of the courthouse, and Kate didn't even want to think about the talk up there today. She really liked Judge McGinn and had even met his wife, Sue, who was as kind as Mrs. Claus. She slowed her steps so Judge McGinn would reach the judge's elevator lobby first, and ended up riding the elevator alone. It gave her 8 floors to screw up the courage to walk into her chambers. And even so, it wasn't nearly enough. She reached the door, braced herself, and opened it. The 2 clerks clustered at Val's desk sprang apart, their heads snapping up, surprised at her early arrival. They'd obviously been talking about her, she could smell it in the air, and Val at her desk looked stiff and miserable, her expression grim. The chambers fell stone silent, except for the rain lashing the window, and nobody said a word as Kate walked in, shed her coat and hung it up, slid off her sunglasses, and walked to Val's desk. Good morning, everyone. Kate kept her face a professional mask and avoided their eyes as they all said their good morning judges. The bodyguard isn't doing until 8:30. Val handed her her mail and phone messages over the low divider, her tone cool. Chief Judge Sherman wants to see when it gets off the bench. She thinks that'll be around 1 o'clock. The press has been calling, but I said we have no comment. You're in court at 11 for the plea agreement we rescheduled. Thanks. Kate flipped through the messages for Graham's name, but he hadn't called. It was early anyway. She looked up at the clerks. Who asked the plea today? Remind me. It's my case, Sam raised his hand. The bench memo's on your chair. Thanks. Come in at 10:15 and we'll talk about it. It's only a guilty plea, Judge. It won't take that long. I want to be fully prepared today. Things didn't go so well yesterday, as you know." Kate turned toward her office, then stopped in surprise at the sight. The room had been completely put back together, even neater than before it had been ransacked. Case files stood up in order on the conference table. Legal pads sat stacked next to a lineup of blue and red briefs. Books had been restored to the bookshelves, and her desktop straightened up with Graham's bouquet of red roses given a place of honor. It must have been so much work. Kate felt a wrench inside at the kindness of the gesture. "The clerk stayed late last night and cleaned up all by themselves," Val said. And Kate turned to the clerks with a smile, dropping her mask. She was getting tired of so many masks all the time. They never fit right, and you couldn't breathe like a kid at Halloween. "Thank you so much, both of you." Kate smiled. "That was a lovely thing to do, and I really appreciate it." "We organized it too," Emily said, beaming. Sam nodded. "It was Emily's idea, and she did most of the work. She thought it might cheer you up after you screwed up in court." "Sam," Val said, frowning, "mind your manners." Emily snapped. "What are you, an idiot?" She said it first. Sam shot back, and Kate held up a hand, laughing. "It's okay, everybody. I did screw up in court. It's still very nice that you two cleaned and organized my office." Kate turned to go, then turned back. "Listen, I know you saw the newspaper, and I know it's awful. I wish I could tell you that it's not true, the part about my private life, but it is." All three listened with somber expressions, with Val at the desk and the two law clerks behind her, like a frieze of federal employees. "I have nothing to say for myself except that I'm very sorry for my behavior. I know you thought better of me. I don't think what you did is so terrible," Emily rushed to say, her voice thin with anxiety. "You're not married, and they would never be making this fuss if you were a man." "Yeah, it's cool," Sam added. Then he caught himself. "I mean, what you do out of court is nobody's business, and it doesn't belong in the newspaper. They should be writing about the war in Iraq or global warming, not your personal life." "Thank you," Kate said, meaning it, and they all pretended not to notice that Val hadn't chimed in. The secretary looked down, showing her graying strands of hair at her temple, and she wore a blue pattern dress. Her gold crucifix peeked from her neckline. Kate asked, "Val, would you come into my nice, clean office?" "Yes, Judge." Val picked up a pad, and Kate went inside with her mail, messages, and purse, and set all of it down. By the time she turned around, Val had taken her customary seat across from the desk, with her pen poised over her paper. "This isn't business, Val." Val set the pen on the pad stiffly. "Kate, I know what I did was wrong, and I know what you must think." "I don't think you do, Judge. You're surprised." "And I am, yes, I am surprised. And you're disgusted with me, and you should be." "No, that's not it." Val shook her head sadly. "I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry that you think so little of yourself." Kate felt the words like a slap to the face, though she knew they weren't intended that way. "I feel sorry that you respected yourself so little and respected your body and your heart so little as to do the things you did. When I saw that story this morning, I prayed for you." Kate didn't know what to say, and Val rose slowly and looked at her with newly shining eyes. "It'll be a struggle around here with the other judges for you. There'll be jokes and people will talk, especially if they do that TV show." Val stood up and stepped close to Kate, placing a soft hand on her shoulder. "When that happens, tell yourself that none of it matters. None of it. That's all outside, and nothing that's outside matters. Not the other judges or the TV or the gossips. Nothing matters but what's in your heart. Don't think on what they say, because you don't have to get yourself right with them. You have to get yourself right with you." Kate felt moved by her words and the emotions that gave them life. The only person who had ever made so much sense to her was her mother. When you get yourself right with you, then you can hold your head high. "Now give me a hug." Val threw her arms open and embraced Kate, who hugged her back, taking surprising comfort in her powdery smells, despite the fact that she was supposed to be a grown-up, a judge, and a boss besides. The phone started ringing and Val released her. "I'll get it," she said. "You get back to work and don't think on it." "Thanks," Kate said, returning to her desk as Val picked up the phone. "Judge Fangy's chambers," she said, and after a minute, "Please hold and I'll see if she's available." She pressed the hold button and Kate looked up. "Judge Menking, for you? Will you pick up?" "Sure," Val pointed a warning finger at her. "Remember what I said, inside, outside." "Inside, outside," Kate repeated like a little mantra, accepted the receiver, and pressed the button to take the call. "Bonner? Kate, my God in heaven, have you seen this trash? Inquirer is out to get you." Where are they getting this? This is defamatory. You have to sue them, Kate. Val hustled out of the office, diplomatically closing the door behind her. Truth is an absolute defense, Bonner. You did all this? You? Yes, I take full responsibility. I did it. What? Kate felt her cheeks get hot. I did it. You couldn't have. Actually, I can't believe it either. But I did. I'm not proud of it, but I did it, and it's over. My God, Kate, what were you thinking? It's so common. It's over, Bonner. That's all I can say. That, and I'm sorry. Ring, ring. Kate's other phone line started ringing, but she let Val get it. But Kate, this is an insult to the court. We can't have this. A judge of our court. They're saying on the internet that another man came forward. He's blogging about you right this moment. My clerks found the webpage. Oh God, there's nothing I can do, Bonner. I'm dumbfounded, Kate. I'm simply dumbfounded. I thought so well of you and how you represent women in our court, and now, well, it's just shameful. I'm very sorry. I am too. Now they're going to portray you on TV, our court on TV. How did this happen, Kate? How did you let this happen to us? I don't know, Bonner. Click. Kate sat shaken, looking out the window, watching rain drench the city. The intercom buzzed, and Kate picked up. Who's on the phone? Judge Kingston, will you take it? Yes. And the bodyguard is here, Judge? Good. Kate pressed the button to pick up. Andrew Kingston was a senior judge and a real sweetheart. She remembered trying cases before him as a young associate, and he never made fun of her begin her cross-examination. Good morning, Andrew. Kate, I've just seen the newspaper and you must get a copy. Not the time, the Inquirer. My secretary says it's on the Daily News, too. They're writing the most terrible things about you, and they're trying to make it about our wonderful court. Spinning the story, I know it's called maligning us all, when it's in fact the most tawdry piece of pulp. I know, Andrew, I heard. Ring, ring, the other phone rang again, but Caitlin Val picked up. If it was Graham, he'd have to wait. What's this world coming to when people write such scandalous stories to publish such things about a member of the court? Our court? It's a travesty. Of course it's scurrilous. Andrew, I'm sorry, but it's true. There was complete silence on the end of the line. After a minute, Kate worried he'd had a heart attack. Andrew, I'm sorry, I must have misheard you. My battery, I'm my hearing aid, it must be running out. I thought you said it was true. No, I'm sorry, Andrew. I've made some mistakes, I admit it. My Kate, it's true? Yes. All of it? Yes, I know, I'm sorry. It seems I've made a mistake too. I'll leave it to it then. Goodbye, Kate. Goodbye. Kate let him hang up, then set the receiver down. The phone began ringing again almost instantly. The intercom buzzed and she picked up for Val. Who is it? Judge me. Oh boy, how many judges are on this court again? 18, I think. Okay, I'll pick up, Kate said, and hit the button. Kate, did you see the paper? It's revolting what they're saying, and on TV. I know, Kate cringed. How can they make a TV show about you without your permission? Did you give permission for this, Kate? No, of course not. Only 15 more to go. Kate took the next 15 calls from each of her colleagues who had toasted her when they thought she was all the things she appeared to be. Most were upset about the dating, but many also cared about her safety and their own. They had called about the articles in the newspaper or online, heard accounts on local TV on KYW radio, had gotten an email about it, or heard from one of their law clerks about a new website, www.icescrewjudgefanty.com. Kate was so busy taking the calls from her colleagues that she didn't get a chance to reach Graham, or take calls from Matt Sorion, CNN, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Matt Lauer, MSN, and the FBI, the National Organization of Women, the Wall Street Journal, Henry Schleif, Time Magazine, Entertainment Tonight, Celebrity Justice, the New York Times, Stephen Brill, the National Law Journal, David E. Kelly, American Lawyer, judges Amy Nislow, Lynn Honickman, Adrian Drost, and Fiona McCann of the National Association of Women Judges, the William Morris Agency, and Detective Steve Nesbitt. By 10:30, only 2 of her colleagues hadn't called, and Kate was due to see one of them, Chief Judge Sherman, at 1 o'clock. The other one was Judge Meriton. Kate tried not to think about it as a timid knock came at her door. "Come in, Sam," she called out, taking the bench memo from her inbox. She had to get ready for court, not that she was looking forward to it. And what about Graham? Chapter 30. Good job, Sam, Kate said after they were finished. She got up from the desk and stretched her arms, trying to shake off the dreads. Rain poured outside the window, making the office gray and gloomy, which she factored into her penance. She didn't know what to expect from court today. She'd been in the judge cocoon all morning, and even though it was a lot less friendly than it used to be, at least it wasn't the public. She wondered if she'd ever leave the courthouse. Maybe Neiman Marcus delivers. Thanks, Judge. Sam gathered the papers and pleadings into a stack. "Be right back. I need to get my tie-in jacket for court." "Fine." Kate crossed your closet, took her judicial robe from a hanger, and slid into it on the fly as Sam opened her office door into a crowd of men in suits. She wasn't completely surprised and was getting used to a police presence in her chambers. "In mourning, gentlemen," she called out, entering the reception area, and saw Brady pushing his way to the front of the pack. His eyes looked tired, and he had on the same dark suit that his white Oxford shirt must have been fresh, because it puffed at the chest in a telltale way. A black patterned tie, color coordinated with a black wire coiling from his ear to his collar. "Good morning, Judge," Brady said, shaking her hand, too professional to let show that he'd read the newspaper. "Don't you sleep, you poor thing?" Kate fastened her robe at its gathered yoke. "I'm fine," Brady gestured behind him. "I understand you hired her bodyguard." "Yes, and he has concurrent jurisdiction." Kate stood on tiptoe, eyeing the crowd, which smiled at her to a man. She didn't have to ask how many had newspaper subscriptions. "I haven't had a chance to meet him yet. Is he scary?" "Bodyguard, where are you?" "He's coming," Val called back, and a man shaped like a tractor trailer drove through the crowd. He looked to be about 30 years old and stood 5'10". His massive shoulders strained the seams of a dark brown suit, tailored from ear mortals, and a dark tie choked his oversized neck like a tourniquet. He had blue eyes, a sandy brush cut, and a smile too sweet to be truly scary. "I'm Justin Stein, judge," he said, shaking her hand lightly to permit blood flow to the heart. "Hey, if your last name were Case, you'd be Justin Case. A good name for a bodyguard." Kate laughed at her own dumb joke, and so did everybody else. She wondered when she became a motel lounge comedian. Answer: when I got scared, embarrassed, and completely self-conscious. "Well, I'm glad you're here. What do we do next?" "You do your job, and I'll make sure you're safe." "I called the Philly cops, and they sent me a photo of Detective Russo." "When did they do that?" Kate asked, surprised. "Earlier this morning. They turned me down at first, but Detective Nisbet gave the okay and faxed it over." "Good. Are you armed?" Kate asked, and Justin nodded. "That makes up for your smile." She turned to Brady. "Okay, what happens now?" "The courtroom is clear. We have agents from plainclothes in the gallery, and Special Agent Donnie and I will be in the room. We'll visually inspect the members of the general public. They won't be admitted until they go through the metal detector, outside your courtroom. You got me an extra one, like in the gang trials?" Brady nodded. "In addition, 2 marshals will be stationed at the metal detector, and one of our agents as well." Yikes! Kate felt overwhelmed. "I doubt Russo will get anywhere near the courtroom, but maybe we'll keep out a reporter or two." Everybody laughed on cue, and Kate smiled, beginning to sweat under her robes. She moved her long sleeves aside and checked her watch. 10:55, time to go, she called out. "Bye, Val." "See ya, Judge." Val called back as Sam went his way through the crowd, and they all left chambers and traveled down the hallway as a well-armed moblet. When they reached the anteroom, the FBI agents piled in first, leaving Kate and the others to be waved ahead on a silent hand signal, which was when she understood that making a federal case was more than a cliche. She walked through the anteroom, braced herself, and entered the courtroom when she heard the courtroom deputy sound off. "All rise for the Honorable Catherine Marie Fandy." Kate strode through the door into the courtroom, instantly concealing her shock at the size of the gallery. Sketch artists, reporters, TV anchor people, court TV personalities, and reporters packed the pews, shoulder to shoulder, wall to wall. They buzzed among themselves more than usual because so many were civilians, and Kate didn't see if Russo had made it in. She didn't want to make eye contact. With her peripheral vision, she could see heads craning for a better view, mascaraed eyes widening, and moose heads leaning together in whisper jokes, then parting with sly smiles. The crowd was even bigger than it had been for Simone's trial. But this time they were there for her, wanting to see the judge who slept around. Inside, outside, Kate barreled up the stairs and onto the dais, feeling 300 pairs of eyes travel her body, even in her loose robes, taking in every detail of her hair, face, breasts, and legs and breasts. Maybe they were looking for the Scarlet A. Kate took her seat at the dais, as if it were perfectly normal to host the entire population of Luxembourg at a routine guilty plea hearing. The AUSA straightened his tie. The female public defender sat a little taller in her chair, and even the defendant patted his hair into place despite his handcuffs. The courtroom deputy shot her their wink. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen." Kate turned to the AUSA. Mr. Crystal, we have a plea agreement in this case, correct? Correct, Your Honor. The government has a deal with Mr. Dow, and I believe Your Honor has a copy of the agreement. I do. Kate glanced at the papers. Though she had memorized them, it was easier than looking at the crowd, and they were still buzzing. Let's begin. Kate turned to the pretty blonde defender at defense table, whose name she'd recalled from the pleadings, Abby Linderman. Good morning, Miss Linderman. Good morning, Your Honor. This is Mr. Dow. Linderman reached down and helped her client to his feet, and Dow rose with difficulty in his ankle shackles. He was tall and thin with a short brown cut and prison pallor, and Kate dressed him directly. Good morning, Mr. Dow. Good morning, Judge, he said softly, but Kate could barely hear him over the buzzing. She eyed the gallery with evident displeasure, but they didn't know her glare was judge speak for shut up. The courtroom deputy sculled too, turning watchfully to them. Order on the court, please. Order. Kate called out, trying to keep a lid on the proceedings. She reflected that in 6 months on the bench she had yet to say that, but she couldn't let this be about her. A man's rights were at stake, and she had her focus clarified by yesterday's debacle. Kate looked down at the defendant. Mr. Dow, I understand that you have pled guilty to 19 counts of making false statements to a firearms dealer, in violation of Title 18 United States Code Section 924A1A. This is a hearing to ascertain that you understand the nature and consequences of your decision, because by entering a guilty plea, you are waiving a number of very important constitutional rights. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Even though you have come here today to plead guilty, you can change your mind. Kate heard some leftover buzzing coming from the back, but let it go rather than make a big deal. She didn't relish courtroom sketches of her screaming at the gallery. If at any time during this hearing you decide you don't want to plead guilty, just tell me, and I will adjourn the hearing and schedule your case for trial. Do you understand? Yes. I now have to ask you some personal questions to make sure you don't have any mental or physical problems that would make it hard for you to understand what we're going to talk about today. Would you say your full name? William Peter Doe. Buzz, buzz, buzz went the back like a wasp. Mr. Dow, how old are you? Kate heard the buzzing again and looked up in annoyance, pointedly scanning the back of the gallery, but she couldn't see the source. Every face looked back at her. The courtroom deputy left his desk on the trail of the noise. She glanced over at Sam, and sitting next to him was Todd Hunter Preppington, taking notes this time. Kate put it out of her mind. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Are you a U.S. citizen? Yes. How far did you go in school? How far did you go in school, Judge? Yelled a man's voice in the back, and the gallery broke into laughter, hiding their smiles behind their hands and looking down. Oh my God, order? Kate stiffened, horrified, scanning the crowd. She had no idea who said it, but it didn't sound like Russo. It had to be the buzzing from the back. The courtroom deputy was already in motion. Brady, standing near there, walked toward the pews and, just in case, edged protectively close to the dais. Heads in the pews turned and craned, giggling and laughing, wheeling to face the back of the courtroom. Amused reporters scribbled in their steno pads, and delighted sketch artists changed pastels at speed, focusing on the bench. I know all about you, Judge. I got your number, we all do. The gallery burst into its naughty laughter again, and talking and whispering erupted. The courtroom deputy and Brady were pointing at the middle of the back row, and 3 federal marshals closed in on a tall, wild-haired man in a shabby green parka and stained gray sweatpants. He looked crazy to Kate, but he had obviously read the newspaper. Crack, I'll have order. Order in this court, she called out, shaken, her face flushing red. She's a goddamn whore, the man screamed at the top of his lungs. The gallery gasped almost collectively. A commotion erupted in the back row. The courtroom deputy and the marshals yanked the man from his seat and dragged him, struggling, out of the pew. On the way out, his arms and elbows flailed, hitting spectators in the row. A whore? They're all whores and bitches. A graduated high school, Dow answered, oblivious, and the gallery broke into new laughter. Order! Mortified, Kate banged the gavel. The marshal grabbed the wild-haired man, but suddenly he wrenched himself free and all hell broke loose. Kate dropped the gavel in shock and jumped to her feet. Or is it bitches? The man shouted, his hair and parka flying, running crazily around the courtroom. The courtroom deputy and the marshals gave chase. "Judge, let's go. Just in case," shouted, materializing at Kate's side and clamping two powerful hands on her arms, but she resisted. "No, wait, this is my courtroom," she watched, riveted. Men in suits lunged for the running man, who kept bolting randomly away. Marshals and FBI agents poured into the courtroom. AUSA Crystal gave chase. The gallery fled the packed pews, climbing over the backs of the seats. Linderman got knocked over in the melee, and Dow ducked for cover under counsel table. "You're a whore!" The man screamed, suddenly changing direction and bolting toward the dais, just out of reach of the marshals and the courtroom deputy. "Nasty, dirty whore! Gotcha!" A marshal shouted, and two new marshals grabbed the man by the hood of his parka, but it came off in their hands. "Do you know whore under them robes?" The man flung himself headlong into the gallery as if it were a humongous marsh pit. "Oh, war, she's not fooling me." People screamed, reporters sprang aside. Sketch artists dropped their big pads. The gallery cleared, except for the screaming man and men in suits converging from everywhere. "We're leaving, Judge," just in case shouted, and hurried her down the stairs and out of the courtroom. Kate took one last look back, and standing amid the chaos was one man she hadn't seen before, and he was watching her go. Chapter 31. "What happened?" Val asked from her computer. "You're back early." "You don't want to know," Kate answered, coming into chambers with just in case, Sam, Special Agent Brady, and assorted FBI agents and federal marshals. They talked excitedly among themselves, hopped up on adrenaline and testosterone. At the disruption, Emily came out of the law clerk's office and over to Val's desk. It was so random, Sam exploded, rushing to Val in his excitement. "This man went crazy and ran around the courtroom. He made a mess of everything. It was unbelievable." "Oh no," Val's eyes flared in alarm, and she rose from her desk. "Oh yes," Kate managed to smile. "And we'll leave out the tissipity she's a whore apart, or the fact that one William Dow entered a courtroom to plead guilty today, and his rights were trampled upon." Kate thought of the poor man being knocked over in his shackles. In fact, he was trampled upon too. "That's awful," Emily said, her mouth the dark lipstick to O. "Did he try to hurt you, Judge?" "No, he just wanted to heckle me." "He was a psycho," Sam interjected, "a total psycho." "Indelicate perhaps, but true," Kate said. But beside her, just in case, was frowning. "It could have hurt you, Judge. We still don't know if he was armed, or—" "That's right," Judge Brady interrupted. "I'll find out all the details after he's taken into custody and let you know." "How could he be armed?" Kate asked. "He couldn't get a gun or a knife through the metal detector." "A ceramic knife goes through a metal detector?" Justin answered. "I trained with the Mossad, and they routinely use ceramic knives. Those suckers could have thrown cleaner than a metal blade." "Yikes. Well, our visitor today didn't look like the Mossad. They dressed better." Kate patted Justin's shoulder, solid as an oak bookshelf. "Thank you, my hero, for spiriting me away to safety." "You're welcome." Justin flashed his sweet ceramic knife smile. "But next time I say go, you have to go, Judge." "Right, sure." Kate saluted. Brady and the cavalry were all over it too. "Thanks to you all too." "You're last but not least." Brady nodded, acknowledging the recognition, but his expression remained stoic. "Thanks, Judge, but I'm afraid the apprehension took longer than expected. Too many cooks. Give it a rest." "All's well that ends well." Kate turned to Val. "Will you call the parties, apologize for me, and reschedule for as soon as possible, now that we know what this heckler looks like? We won't let him in again?" "Sure, Judge." Val handed her a phone message and met her eye meaningfully. "This call came in while you were in court. Thanks." Kate didn't have to look at the message to know the caller. "Why don't I order you a salad so you can eat something before you go see the chief judge?" "That's okay, I'm not hungry." Kate nodded to the assembled army. "Thanks again, all of you. If you'll excuse me, I'll go do my job. Are you all set for lunch?" "Yes, thanks," Brady answered. "When are you in court again, Judge?" "Not until Monday, right, Val?" Kate couldn't believe how much had happened in 1 week. Was it just last Monday that she had presided over a trial, and Simone had been alive, and Mars and her scummy private life had been her own? "TGIF," she said, and they all laughed. "Right, Monday at 9, Judge, U.S. versus Blenheim, cocaine trafficking. Yay, crime that doesn't involve me." Kate laughed, and they all laughed again. She got funnier the more stressed she got. "Danger agrees with me." She appointed an Emily. "Blenheim, you're a case girl?" "Yes, Judge. Bench memo ready?" "Just finished it, and the final draft of the Simone opinion is on the call." "Simone's opinion is on your chair. We'll talk about both after I get back from Chief Judge Sherman's chambers. Please make me a package to work over the weekend on Blenheim. And now I depart." Thanks again, gentlemen. Welcome, Judge, they answered. And Kate slipped into her office, closed the door behind her, and crossed to the phone. She sat down the message on her desk and sank into her chair, still in her robes. After 2 rings, the phone was answered. Graham? Kate? Yes, hi, sorry, Mr. Call. I just had a crazy guy loose in my courtroom. Film it alone, you're a whore. Kate, you're so famous. Graham sounded so cold that his voice had its own windshield factor. The news is all you all the time. I know this was really something. The FBI thinks he tried to kill me, but the Mossad disagrees, as do all sensible people. So, is any of it true in the newspaper? I'm fine. Thanks. Kate found her thoughts straying to the man in the middle of the chaos in the courtroom watching her go. Nesbit, he had been there, evidently looking out for her, and he had faxed the photo of Russo to Spec to safe. Kate, are you there? Yes, I asked you. Is it true? About me being stopped or the dating or the TV series, Kate asked, as if she didn't know. She watched the rain hit the window and run down in sooty rivulets like tiny polluted rivers. She was sure someone had ordered this ecological disaster just for her. I meant the dating, Graham answered. Is it true? You are beautiful, you know that? In a word? Yes. Impossible. A nasty, dirty whore. It happened? It's true? You go into those bars? Yes, but it's over. I can't believe it. I know. I'm sorry. You're sorry. I'm going to say this straight. I don't think we should see each other anymore. Kate eyed his roses, which weren't even drooping yet. The flowers last longer than the relationship. Graham, why don't you give me a chance to explain it to you? There's nothing you can say. This party I was going to take you to on Saturday night? It's with all my best clients and their wives. They read the paper. Graham raised his voice, getting angrier. I've already gotten calls from 2 of them who knew I was seeing you. You know, you're a little bit different. And I'm not seeing you. You don't want to know what they said. No, I don't. Kate closed her eyes. She's a whore under them robes. You made me a laughingstock. We went out 3 times. It's not about you. Am I going to be in the TV show too? No, of course not. And you gave me that crap about babysitting and I fell for it. I was babysitting. I'm sorry. It's over. What if we had dinner and talked? I don't think so, Kate. This doesn't work for me. Kate nodded, suddenly maxed out. Okay, fine, I understand. Take care of yourself. You too, Kate said and hung up. She couldn't blame him, and she refused to feel sorry for herself. This wasn't the time or the place she had to move on. She got up, slid out of her robe, crossed to the closet, and hung it back up. Then she returned to her desk, lifted the bouquet of roses from their glass vase, and dropped them, dripping into the wastebasket. The cloudy water in the vase left a funky odor. Oh, just stockbroker, Kate said, to nobody in particular. She shook down her wrist so the gold bracelet slid out from under her black suit sleeve. She unfastened the clasp and the bracelet fell into her cupped hand. Give me a wrist. Kate opened her drawer, pulled out an envelope, and slid the bracelet inside to be sent back to Graham. She had more important things to worry about, like Chief Judge Sherman. Chapter 32. Come in, Kate. Chief Judge Sherman rose from behind his desk and motioned to her with a smile. Please close the door behind your dear. Got it. Kate closed the door. Cigar smoked lingered in the air. I'm having tea. Shall I ask Mo to get you some? No, thanks. Kate entered his lovely office, crossing the oriental rug and passing the jewel-toned tapestry couch. Rain beat outside his window too because all of the chambers shared the eastern exposure, but it seemed less gloomy here. More men can desert light glowed from water-furred crystal lamps on the end tables, and Kate made a mental note to finally move into her office. Is it down? Sherman picked up his black reading glasses, and Kate seated herself in a club chair in front of his desk. Did you have some lunch? No, I'm not hungry. Kate had been trying to ignore the jumpy sensation in her stomach. She'd already thrown up this year. Our cafeteria has served delicious chicken today. Chicken marsala, imagine. Sherman chuckled, easing back into his chair. Aren't we fancy? Chief, let me say how sorry I am about all of this. Sherman raised a hand, still chuckling. I must say, when I was growing up, you know what I ate every day for lunch. Know what? Kate asked, playing along. If he was trying to put her at ease, it wasn't working. She could hardly meet his eye, and she'd been doing so well with the eye meeting this morning. Every day I went home for lunch. School was only 3 blocks from my house. I went to Marion Elementary in the suburbs. Do you know it? No, Mary is only 20 minutes outside the city. The golf club is there. Kate sensed she should know it, but she didn't. In any event, every day I'd go home for hot dogs with baked beans. Every day my brother and I ate the same thing. The only difference was that sometimes we put the hot dogs in the beans. In other days, we ate the hot dog on white bread. You know, that soft white bread. Wonder Bread, of course. Wonder Bread. Kate smiled. It is a funny name. Milled strong bodies, 12 ways. What 12 ways? Kate said, and they both laughed. They used to spray it with vitamins. Ha! Imagine if you tried that today. Think of it. At home, Ellen buys that artisanal bread from Whole Foods. Dark brown with what? Tree bark sticking out, for God's sake, Kate laughed. You can hardly dare to part with your teeth. I lose my bridge work every time. 55 grains or some such silliness. Milled strong bodies, 55 ways, right? Perfect, Kate? Sherman laughed heartily, holding his chest, his reading glasses still in hand. Their stems like crossed legs. Everything old is new again, isn't it? It sure is. Kate felt her stomach relax a little and eased back in the chair. Your master plan is working, Chief. I'm starting to feel better. Excellent, excellent, Sherman said, doing a passable Montgomery Burns, and they both laughed again. Then he cleared his throat. Tell me, Kate, how are you holding up through this travail? Not terrible, not great. I understand you're at quite a morning. Sherman nodded sympathetically. Tell me about the man in your courtroom today. It was bad, but it's fine now. Your attacker was unarmed. I understand from the Marshal Service. I figured. He wasn't really an attacker. He was more like a heckler. He began yelling during the colloquy and running wild. It disrupted the entire proceeding, and I got off the bench. Safely, I trust. Yes, Sherman nodded. The only problem with public service is the public, it seems. And yesterday, what happened? Kate had to think. Yesterday was the longest day of my life. I'm referring to the sentencing for conspiracy to distribute Dama. Oh, right, Kate remembered. How had he heard about that, Meredith? I had to end the proceeding. Tell me what happened. I was unprepared, frankly. My house and chambers had just been broken into when I was distracted. Understandable. Russo is targeting you, it seems. Yes, definitely. He blames me for the ruling and for Mars's suicide. Terrible, just terrible. Sherman tisk-tisked. The risks we take as judges, the responsibility we carry. I hired a bodyguard. He's sitting in your reception area with the FBI agent as we speak. Between them and the marshals, I feel safe. Kate thought again of Nesbit in the courtroom. Good. Sherman sipped tea from a white porcelain mug with the tea bag hanging out. The little square of white paper fluttered on its string as the mug moved back to the desk. Why did you end the proceeding then? You mean Dama? I wanted to hold it when I was fully prepared. It's scheduled for this coming week, I believe. Kate made a mental note to check with Val. But you're on trial this coming week, U.S. versus Blenheim. How will you do both? I'll squeeze it in somewhere. Kate answered, surprised. Sherman, as chief judge, had access to their dockets and schedules, but she hadn't realized he followed them that closely. There was another matter, I understand, that you canceled. There was? Kate had to think a minute. She hadn't expected to be talking about this after what had happened in the courtroom today. Where was this coming from? A pretrial motion. Shredder versus Eccles Industries. Oh yes, right. Kate thought back nervously. That was what she'd canceled to go see Micah. I had to run out. I was following up on something about Russo. Did you reschedule that? The motion hearing? I'm not sure, but I will. Kate's stomach tensed. It's vacation over. Why do you ask, Chief? I got a call this morning from the parties. They needed a ruling on a question about an out-of-town deposition. Kate flushed. Oh, sorry. I guess I didn't call them back yet. It was a simple discovery matter, so I ruled during a break in my trial. Ma will send Val a copy of the order. Thank you. I also got a number of calls this morning from your colleagues, Bonner, Andrew, Gloria, Bob. Sherman paused. I couldn't field all of them because I was on the bench. I forget who else called. And Jonathan, he must have called. Yes, he did, of course. Almost all of them weighed in about this newspaper coverage today, and about your proclivities. Sherman smacked his lips as if the word had an aftertaste. Your colleagues tell me that you said the reports are true about these things. Yes, they are. Kate felt her stomach and face on fire, which might be a biological first. I say they were unanimous in their judgment, and I must say as a personal matter I'm very disappointed in you. I had such hopes for you. Sherman frowned behind his glasses. I knew you were young, but I was certain you'd mature into the position. I liked your style, I guess I should say. Through your different but refreshingly so, I saw you as the future of this court. We're used to. Kate felt like dying. We think as a court that its conduct done becoming. It hurts me to tell you this. Sherman slid off his glasses and examined his reading glasses as if he'd never seen them before. I normally wouldn't consider your personal life a matter for public discussion, but your whole public office, Kate. You're a public official. The duties you perform serve the public and the cause of civil and criminal justice. I know, Chief, and I'm sorry. It'll never happen again. I'm sure of that. I know you. At least I felt as if I did. You do, Kate rushed to say. All of us are married, as you know. We have families except for the one messy divorce every year, which is our annual allotment. At this, Sherman smiled slightly. We lead exemplary lives on and off the bench. We have to. The first canon of judicial ethics is that a judge must uphold the integrity of the bench. The comments require us to personally observe high standards of conduct. I know, Your Honor. Canon 2 instructs us to avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety in all activities, not merely those on the bench. I know, and I'm sorry. I was wrong. Kate felt like it was the quietest, longest, and most excruciating dressing down she'd ever had. I didn't think the prospect of this TV series about judges, of course, is completely unacceptable. I hate the idea, too. They're saying it's fictional, but no one will believe that. I don't want anyone making a TV show about my court. Sherman stiffened. It's anathema to me. I assume you will file suit with your resources. I had heard that you've been in touch with Matt Sorian. He's exactly whom I tired Kate. A lawyer with teeth. Meriden, I did call Matt, but he advises me that I wouldn't win, and I agree. I've been thinking that suing would do more harm than good. I've decided not to sue. How so? Why? Sherman's lips parted in surprise. You can't be seen as acquiescing. This is a question of appearances. You must sue. No, I won't. I think it would bring more attention to the show. Kate had decided last night after talking to Gina. She wouldn't compound the damage she'd already done. It's protesting too much, giving it publicity, making it bigger than it is. You wouldn't be making it bigger than it is. Sherman frowned deeply and his tone took on a new urgency. A Turn Is at Law is a hugely popular show. Everyone watches it, even me. Ellen's book group switched their night to Monday because of it. I'm going to weather, Chief. Sherman set his reading glasses down quietly. What are you saying? The relevant question is, can our court weather it? Are you saying you'll stand by and do nothing to stop this? To stop them from hurting our court? I have no choice, Chief. Sherman eyed her for a moment over his folded reading glasses. Then I'll have no choice. You'll be leaving me no choice. If you don't sue, I'll have to ask you to resign. Kate almost fell off the chair. Resign? From being a judge? Yes, of course. I'll have to ask for your resignation if you won't sue. At least that. Sherman shook his head as if the explanation were simple. I have to protect our court, our judges, our staff. We all work too hard to get dragged through the mud on television. Or in the press, you have to sue Kate. Then you'd at least be doing something to remedy this terrible situation you created. Then at least I could defend you. Chief, this will die down. It has to. And not if they make a TV show about it. Not the way the press massages TV and vice versa. Sherman scoffed. It's a 24-hour news cycle, as they say. And I cannot have the entire Eastern District on TV as news or entertainment. You tell me which is which nowadays. Kate, won't you sue? Please rethink your position. Sherman hunched over an appeal. Give it a day. Confirm with Matt. You're not thinking clearly. You'll be an excellent judge someday, Kate. Don't throw it away. Don't make me ask you to step down. You don't have to. Yes, I do, and I will if you don't sue. Sherman edged away in his chair, watching her as if from a distance. And Kate flashed forwarded on what it would be like to be frozen out of his friendship, much less off the bench. But I just got on the court. I'm not giving it up. I earned this job. Kate thought about what Gina had said. You wanted the promotion, but did you want the job? And then she knew. Just as she was about to lose it. Maybe finally because she was about to lose it. Chief, I want this job. Then you should have taken better care of it. Sherman faced off with her over his desk. We can do this easy, or we can do this hard, resign or sue. Kate reconsidered it, her resolve wavering. It would be so easy to sue, just file the papers. Then she remembered. But what's right for you might be wrong for Warren and me. I can't, then step down, I won't, then that's that, I tried. Sherman's tone hardened, and he shrugged, as if shedding her. Effective immediately, your cases are reassigned. Blend time, Dalma, all of them. You're off the bench. I'll reassign Val to another judge. Nobody wants those law clerks. They're on their own. You can't do that, Chief. You don't have the power. I most certainly do. I manage the dockets, and your docket just got cleared. You left me no choice. Federal judges hold their office only during good behavior. Kate rose. The Constitution doesn't speak to this, Chief, and you don't have the power to execute even if it did. But Sherman had stopped listening. He rose too, then pulled a sheaf of papers from his desk and handed them across the desk. This is a complaint of judicial misconduct against you. It will be filed by the end of the day. A misconduct complaint? Kate snatched the papers, but she was too emotional to read them. The misconduct statute wasn't meant for an overactive sex life. The statute is aimed at conduct on the bench, within the scope of office. Bias, conflict of interest, it doesn't cover me. Who drafted this, Jonathan? He feels very strongly that the court is being harmed. And now that we've spoken, I agree. Chief, this is insane. No, it's insane to sacrifice an entire court from one individual, no matter who it is. I won't have my court turned into a television spectacle. They'll still do the show. If you aren't on the court, it won't be about a sitting judge. It won't involve us any longer. Sherman bore down, leaning across the desk. Kate, last chance, don't make me file against you. The complaint goes to the chief judge of the Third Circuit, and he can hold hearings, take testimony. Is that what you want? You want trial, a judge as the defendant. Oh no. Your misconduct is clear. It's all over the press, and it affected the performance of your official duties. You just admitted as much. Admitted, Kate blinked. Where'd she heard that before? Rousseau at her door. You canceled important court appearances. You dismissed an ongoing proceeding because you were unprepared. I had to leave the bench to rule an emotion you hadn't rescheduled. Are you taping me? Kate looked around in disbelief, and Chief Judge Sherman flushed red. I have a court to protect, and so do you. No. Will you resign? Hell no. Kate turned on her heel and ran from the office. Chapter 33. Kate stormed into the unfamiliar chambers ahead of a bewildered Justin Case and Special Agent Brady. Meredith and Secretary looked up from her computer keyboard. Judge Fanti. Hi, Denise. Kate called over her shoulder, flinging open the door to Meredith's office and gesturing Justin and Brady inside. Follow me, gentlemen. Judge Meriton's going to need protection. Judge? Justin said. But Kate was already striding to Meriton's desk, where he sat on the phone in his shirt sleeves. His reptile flopped over his shoulder and his feet crossed on the desk. Say goodbye, Jonathan. Kate reached over and pressed down the hook. What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing? Meriton hung up the phone and whirled around in his chair facing her. I was on a very important phone call. Listen, you little bastard. Kate leaned over the desk. I was just with Sherman, and I saw the complaint you wrote. I know what you're trying to do, and I know why you're trying to do it, and you won't win. You should look at yourself in the mirror. No, you jerk. You had it in for me from the beginning. You were never a colleague. Kate glared into his baby blues and realized that not all monsters had scary red eyes. Some even wore starchy white collars and boring ties. You don't like me. You're jealous and you're mean, small, and petty. I don't have to take this. Meriton stood up. You threw me out of your office, and I'll throw you out of mine. Don't bother. I'm going. I was dumb enough to hand you a card, and you played it to the hilt. But this isn't over, because I know how to fight for my life, and you don't. You never had to, and so you're afraid. Oh, please. That's why you kept hatch marks on me, why you send your law clerks to spy, and why you run to Daddy all the time. You're not man enough to confront me, and you never will be. I'll win because you're afraid. You'll see. I'll hold my breath. Please do. Kate turned, shaking with anger, and stormed out of the office with Justin and Brady falling in place behind her. She stalked out to the reception area and threw open the chamber's door, then stormed down the hall to her own chambers. You all right, Judge? Justin asked while Brady kept his own counsel. Never better, Kate said, fuming. Bet the Mossad never taught you about a pissed-off Italian. No, watch and learn, pal. Kate was at her own door in the next few steps, and opened it just as Val was hanging up the phone. She knew from the secretary's shocked expression that she'd just been called by Sherman's office. Lord Kate, Val said, her tone hushed as a prayer. It doesn't waste any time, does he? He's suspending you? Looks that way. Val's hand flew to her mouth. I am so sorry, me too. Kate walked over to her desk, and the clerks came out of their office and gathered around for the way they always did. Except this might be the last time they did it. What's going on? Emily asked worriedly. What do you mean you're suspended? Can they do that? Sam went pale. Just could you screw around? Kate was beyond wincing. Definitely yes, at least until I figure out what to do about it. What's that mean for us? Sam asked, are we suspended too? Of course not, silly, Emily said, rolling her lined eyes, and Kate didn't have the heart to tell them what Sherman had said. Give me a minute, folks. Everybody go to their desks, please. I'll be right back. Kate hurried into her office, closed the door behind her, and made a beeline for the phone on her desk, pressing in the main number. Beaker and Hardigan said the quay of ring voice when the call connected. Mrs. Pershing. Matt Sorion, please. Judge Fonte, is that you? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Please hold, Mrs. Pershing said, and the next voice was Matt's. Matt, it's Kate. My God, Kate, I saw the papers. We both did. Listen, I have some hard questions, law review type issues. 1. Is it within the power of a chief judge to suspend a district court judge for off-the-bench sexual conduct? Obviously, the issue is what you read about in the paper. Well, Kate, wait. Hold on, there's more. 2. Does sexual misconduct rise to the level of judicial misconduct within the meaning of the statute? And 3rd, what is meant by good behavior in Article 3 of the Constitution? Kate, I can't undertake that research for you. Chief Judge Sherman just called. He called you? We just hung up. He's angry with me and with Beaker for advising you not to sue. What? What are you talking about? He has no right to do or say that. I'll tell you what I told him, that I did not so advise you. I merely suggested that your chance of prevailing would be low, and that the decision to sue or not to sue was a personal decision which you should make. What? Kate thought she'd entered a parallel universe where your boss taped your conversation and your partners betrayed you. That's not what you advised me at all, Matt. You advised me not to sue. That's not what I said. And what do you get off talking with Sherman or anyone else about my legal business? What about client confidentiality? You waived it, Kate. You spoke to him about my advice, and I thought it only fair to clarify what I told you. Clarify you lied, my speaking to him waives nothing, and you know it. I can't afford to have my legal advice misconstrued to the chief judge of our district court. Beaker can't afford that either, Kate. You, of all people, should understand. Screw you, too, Matt. Kate slammed down the phone just as there was a knock on the door. Come in, she called out, flustered, and the door opened onto 2 federal marshals, a bodyguard, and an FBI agent. Kate tried to recover. Yes, gentlemen. Judge Fandy? The marshals entered her office in their dark blue jackets, looking so somber that Kate felt a bolt of alarm. What is it? Is Russo back? Judge, we've been asked to escort you out of the building. But I'm not going anywhere, Kate said, and came up to speed, incredulous. Am I being thrown out of the courthouse? The clerk's office asked us to take care of it, Judge. We don't know any more about it. We're just doing what we're told. I'm with you wherever you go, Justin said. His lips pursed. So am I, Brady added. And Kate wondered fleetingly whether Justin and Brady could take the marshals. Okay, I'm going. Kate rose and looked around her desk, trying to think clearly. She hadn't seen this coming. She didn't think any of this could happen. What should she take? What should she leave? Would she ever come back? She hadn't even got the chance to went back. She picked up her purse and went to the door, smiling at the marshal. It was one she recognized. Please don't cuff me, Mel. I'd like to avoid the obvious handcuff joke. No cuffs, Judge, he smiled sadly. And Kate led her entourage out and into the reception area, where Val and the clerks were standing stricken. The clerks looked at her, blinking like baby chicks, and even Val looked worried as a mother hen. Kate said, Nobody, freak. I'll get us out of this. Here's what matters. Val, they're going to reassign you. To who? I don't know yet. I'll assume they'll give you some time to organize my files. I'll need time. I just won't leave you. I can't just walk out of here. I don't want to. Kate raised a hand. Do what they say so you don't get in trouble. And remember, you're invaluable. Val threw her arms open and gave her a big hug, which still smelled like powder. Kate willed herself not to get choked up and turned to the law clerks. Guys, listen. Did either of you get job offers? Not yet, Emily answered, and Sam shook his head. Morgan just rejected me yesterday. Kate patted his tiny shoulder. Okay, don't worry. Take the weekend to put your life in order. Sleep in. Enjoy yourselves. Are we out of a job? Emily asked, upset. No, you work for me now, and I'm giving you both a vacation. Take some time off, I'll match your pay. In fact, I'll give you a raise, okay? You don't have to do that, Judge. Emily's eyes glistened, but Sam nodded. Yes, she does. I'll be in touch with you next week. Just don't worry. Kate gave them each a quick hug, went to the coat rack, and slid into her coat. "See you later. Say goodbye to the courtroom deputy for me," she said, as she left her chambers. She held her chin up as they crowded silently into the tiny judge's elevator and rode it down to the judge's lobby, where Kate turned to Brady. "You must be exhausted. Don't you have a shift change or something? That too will switch." "Good." Kate turned to Justin. "I'd like you to go over to a house on Meadowbrook Road and stay there until the end of the day." She gave him Gina's address. "Then go back next week and the one after that. Stay there just in case Russo gets in somehow. You sure?" "Yes, thanks for everything." Kate shook his hand and nodded to Brady. "We out of here?" she asked. And she went through the door to the parking lot, got into her car and drove it out, picking up Brady's black-crowned Vic on her tail. By the time she reached the security kiosk, she took a ride onto 7th Street, then another on to race around the back entrance of the courthouse. Traffic was light, but the rain was heavy. And she cruised down the street, the windshield wipers thumping back and forth. And she stopped at the red light, numbly watching them beat, trying not to think about the fact that she'd lost everything she had in one stormy afternoon. She reached her street and took a left, stopped by the traffic and commotion she'd never seen before on her quiet street. A mob of reporters carrying umbrellas crowded the sidewalk in front of her house, and at least 8 boxy white news vans, each with its cheery multicolored logo, clogged traffic by parking on the curb, their microwave poles soaring into the storm like modern-day church spires. Oh no, Kate kicked herself. She should have realized that at least some media would be staked out in case she came home. She'd been too preoccupied to think ahead. She hit the gas, then braced. A WCAU TV news van stuck out into the street, preventing her from going forward. Kate threw the car into reverse just as one of the reporters spotted her, pointing with a surprised shout that was muffled by her car windows. Suddenly, photographers aimed still cameras at the car, their automatic flashes firing like tiny explosions. TV cameramen raised their video camera to their shoulders, pointing long lenses at her. Reporters started running toward her. Kate had to get out of there. She checked her rear view. The Crown Vic idled behind her. "Brady, move!" Kate yelled, signaling frantically for him to back up. But it was too late. Reporters banged on the window, shouting questions. "Judge, are you fit to serve on the bench? What do you have to say about reports on your personal life?" Klieg sprang to life, aimed at Kate in the car. "Judge Fandy, give us a comment." "Come on, any comment, Judge." "Look this way, Judge." "Put down the window, Judge." Kate slammed on the horn. She couldn't go back. Reporters swarmed the car. Brady stopped. She looked around for an escape. She couldn't get out of the car. She'd be imprisoned in the house. There, the sidewalk. "Judge, why are you dating the criminal element, Judge?" "Judge, where's your ex-husband?" "Judge, are you getting a cut from the TV series?" "Judge, are you gonna sue?" Kate edged forward as if they weren't there, and the reporters parted when she didn't stop, springing out of the way, hollering after her car, filming and snapping away. Reporters ran after the car, but Kate drove up on the curb, then accelerated, avoiding a cameraman near the front bumper. She hit the gas and sped to the end of the street, then turned around the corner, driving away. News vans gave chase, but they were no match for the Mercedes 8-cylinder. Kate barreled through the city streets, hit the expressway at speed, and lost them all, including Brady. By the third exit, her cell phone started ringing. She flipped open the phone, tense and upset. "Yes, Brady, where are you, Judge?" "Listen, I think I won't be needing you for a while." "What?" Brady had to shout over the pouring rain. "You're on 95, I'm on 95, looking for you." "Brady, relax." Kate drove under the I-76 sign at the Art Museum exit. "I'm going out of town, and where I'm going, nobody will find me. Not the press, not Russo, not anyone. Judge, tell me exactly where you are, where you're going." "Thanks, Brady." "For everything," Kate said, and closed the phone. She didn't want him following her. She didn't want anybody following her. She'd had enough invasions into her privacy for a lifetime. She hit the gas, reaching 70, then 80, soaring away. She didn't exhale until she left the city limits. And 2 exits after that, she realized where she was going. The only place where no one could find her, because it didn't exist anymore. Chapter 34. Kate drove with the radio off, insulating herself from the news and leaving Philadelphia far behind. In time, the only sounds with a regular thumping of the rain on the car and the pounding of the big windshield wipers. And she switched on to the Pennsylvania Turnpike and drove north for an hour, finally beginning to relax only when she steered off the turnpike. She slowed the car and felt a calming inside, her heartbeat returning to normal at the familiarity of the sights. The First Energy Stadium, the truck accessories outlets, and the plywood gazebos for sale, interspersed with the onion domes of Ukrainian Catholic churches, their golden minarets and hatched crucifixes oddly exotic in the rural American landscape. The elevation changed at Pricetown, and Kate felt the slightest pressure in her ear, like the whisper of an old friend. The rain became sleet, and the car climbed over the wet bridge and into the snowy tree-covered mountains that embraced the road. The traffickers sparse her on this exact route through the Appalachians, and Kate drove over steep hills and down deep valleys, the motion making her aware of her own fatigue, as if she were being rocked to sleep. Snow began to fall, and she spotted a billboard for a Holiday Inn Express, got off Route 61 in Frackville, and pulled into an almost empty parking lot, where she grabbed her purse and got out of the car. The frigid air took her by surprise, and icy snowflakes bit her cheeks like tiny shards of glass, as if heaven itself was shattering and falling in pieces around her. When Kate woke up, she wasn't sure where she was. The room was pitch black, disorienting her, and she sat up uncomfortably hot. She still had her coat on and shrugged her way out of it, then rubbed her eyes. A window was in front of her, the curtains open, and the hillside glowed a ghostly white from the new-fallen snow. She turned around and found a clock by its green digital numerals glowing in the dark, 9:30. At night, Kate got up, walked around the bed, and found a switch which immediately cast a harsh light around the room, reminding her. Holiday Inn resigner Sue Russo after her Mars dead Simone murdered Gina and Warren. She searched around for her cell phone and saw that the display had gone black. Her battery was dead. She hadn't plugged it in, of course. She set it down and reached to the end table for the telephone. And her call connected after 2 rings when she said, "Gina, Kate, I've been calling your cell. Are you okay? I heard there was a crazy guy in court." "You're a whore." "Oh, that, I'm fine, really." "Where are you?" "A Holiday Inn in Frankville." "You're kidding." "Is Frankville near Frankville?" "What are you doing in Frankville?" "I got out of Dodge. I was over the press." Kate considered telling her she was suspended, then let it go. "Don't turn the TV on then. You'll freak." Kate sighed. "How's the baby?" "Fine. We still hate the new speech therapist." "Hey, why didn't you just come here?" "After last night, I think you guys are better off if I stay away. By the way, did you get the bodyguard I sent you? Justin? He's parked out front. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. So why don't you come over here now that we're all safe?" "No, thanks. I feel better away from it all." "When are you coming back?" "God knows. After the weekend. What about work? Don't you have court?" "I'm not on the bench until later. Much later. Nesbitt was here today. He came and got his car. Nice guy. He was asking about you." "Habba happa." Kate flashed on Nesbitt, watching her from the middle of the courtroom. "Calm yourself. I'm never having sex again." "Who's talking about sex? I'm talking marriage." "Oh, wait. The baby's about to knock over a glass. I'll let you go. I'm fine and I'll call you later." "Okay, stay in touch. Love you, me too." Kate hung up, suddenly aware that she was hungry and thirsty. She grabbed her bag, found her card key, and left, walking across the parking lot to a Cracker Barrel. The air was black, the night starless, and her blonics were wet by the time she reached the restaurant, warming instantly at the sight of its ersatz coziness. Antique ladles and strainers hung from the ceiling, and its fake country store sold cast-iron skillets, goo-goo pies, and souvenir sweatshirts that reminded Kate she had no clothes. She bought a tourist sweatsuit, a stash of Trident gum, and a takeout meatloaf called Comfort by the Slice, then carried her booty back to her Holiday Inn, where she ate, showered, and slept her way through to Sunday morning, ignoring all media until she picked up the free news for the night. She picked up the free newspaper and the hotel lobby. Schuylkill Sunday. Kate guessed that it wouldn't mention her secret sex life. She got upstairs and skimmed the newspaper at her desk over Cracker Barrel's country morning breakfast. Soft, indirect light filled the room, reflecting off the pristine snow outside the window, and Kate felt rejuvenated for the first time in days until her gaze fell on the date on the newspaper. On February 23rd, the anniversary of her mother's death, she felt a familiar tightening in her chest. Her mother had died 17 years ago of an aneurysm. Today. Ring! The phone jarred Kate from her thoughts. Gina was the only person who knew she was here. She crossed to the end table and picked it up. A man's voice said, "Judge." Kate went silent, the fear rushing instantly back. "It's Nesbit, Stephen Nesbit." "Oh, geez." Kate sat down on the bed, relieved. "How did you know I was here?" "Your friend Gina. She called me at the roundhouse and said you were going home. She's worried about you." "I'm fine. It feels good to be alone, me and my Cracker Barrel. I'm developing a taste for Velveeta on iceberg wedges. You called off the feds in your bodyguard as eating pancakes at Genus. You think that was a good idea?" "Yes. When are you coming back?" "I don't know." Kate hesitated to tell him she'd been fired, but he already knew much worse about her, so she did. "I figured Sherman for a much better man than that." "Thanks," Kate said, touched. "I don't know if you're safe up there. We still don't have Russo, and Frackville's not that far from the city. But how would he know I'm here?" "He could dig a little. He knows there's a state prison in Frackville. All of us do." "Does your buyers show your hometown?" "No, and Frackville isn't my hometown anyway." Kate had made sure to keep that to herself in the snotty Philly bar. "Up here, I feel safer than I have in a long time." "I won't take that personally." Kate caught herself. "I didn't mean it that way. I could call the local police, ask them to check in on you." "No, that's okay. I doubt they can spare the car, and I like that no one up here knows my story. Or cares. Look, it's Sunday and I'm off duty. I could come up, keep an eye on things, we could have dinner." And Nesbit added quickly, "Obviously, I don't mean anything by it. I mean, well, you know what I mean, not like a date. Abba hubba. More above the call, like in the courtroom. I got you in. I'll get you out. I told you that. So what do you say? Should I come up tonight? February 23rd. Probably not. It's the anniversary of my mother's death. I might go visit the grave. I could sit in the parking lot. Keep an eye out." "That's okay, thanks." "Well, I'll give a call and check in on you." "Take care, Judge." Kate set the receiver down on the hook, feeling a warmth that evaporated when she eyed the snow-covered scene outside the window, bracing herself for what was to come. Chapter 35. Kate's was one of the few cars on Route 61 which had been plowed and salted, its shoulders triangles of clumped snow. She felt fortified by a fresh cup of Mobil Station coffee, her windshield newly cleared by a cheap scraper. The route snaked around tree-covered hillsides into the town of Ashland, and she traveled the main drive, which ended in an immense bronze statue of Whistler's mother, sitting atop the peak of the hill. She looked away as she passed its pedestal, which read, "A mother is the holiest thing alive." The road was a single lane each way, and the modest houses built close to the street. She drove through the entire town in about 10 blocks, then traveled straight up a steep grade and reached the mountain that signaled she had arrived home. A tall white sign marked the spot, but it didn't bear the town's name. Instead, this sign read, "Warning, danger." Kate felt an angry twinge inside her chest as she passed the sign, following Route 61, as it had been rerouted to the right and traveled to the summit, where the school and church used to be. Sitting across the street from each other like family at a holiday table, St. Ignatius Cemetery was off the road on the left. Her mother was buried there, but Kate wasn't ready for that yet. She drove ahead, down the valley, passing the abandoned landfill where it had all begun. Locust Avenue, as this stretch had been called, used to be lined with two-story row houses, but the houses were gone. Kate descended into the valley and encountered a sight that looked like hell on earth. The trees were dead, their tops stumps and their branches reaching brittle into the gray sky. Green street signs remained, jutting pointlessly from the new fallen snow. Billowing smoke burned from various holes and wafted in white drifts that rolled across Locust Street. The smoke looked as innocent as the homey white curls from a chimney, but it contained carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and toxic steam. Its stench, acrid and sulfurous, seeped into Kate's car. The odor defined her childhood, along with baking apple pie and Play-Doh. It used to make her lightheaded, and her mother had been among the first to realize that it wasn't her child who was sick. It was the town. A fire had been raging underground for decades, fueled by a seam of anthracite coal that lay under Centralia and the surrounding towns. The fire started back in 1962 in the dump behind Kate's school, and state and federal governments botched chances to put out the fire when it was still possible. As a result, row houses that had housed 1,400 people had been demolished, and the town had ceased to exist. Whoever said you can't go home again must have been from Centralia. Kate took a left, then another, driving up the street, the toxic smoke momentarily engulfing the Mercedes. She held her breath and pulled up at the top of the street, where her house used to be. Under the snow, only a rim of black asphalt remained of their sidewalk, and a sinewy trail of poisoned smoke snaked from where her living room had been. The gases had seeped in through their basement, causing her mother to fall asleep in her recliner at night. The Fanties were told that the gas levels were safe, but they still kept the windows open on the coldest winter nights and shared a gas monitor with neighbors, placing it in the basement so that its alarm would wake them before the poisoned gas sent them to a more permanent slumber. Kate eyed the snake of poisoned smoke in the middle of the ghost town that was her hometown. Time to go. She turned around and drove to St. Ignatius Cemetery, set among the bare trees. Steam rose everywhere around the graves. Local lore always held that the mine fire never reached underneath St. Ignatius, but Kate doubted it. Her mother had still wanted to be buried here. Kate drove through the gates left open, but the asphalt road up the center hadn't been plowed. She cut the ignition, got out of the car, and steeled herself. The cold air hit her fully in the face, along with the awful sulfur odor, and she flipped up the collar of her coat. She approached her mother's grave, her jaw set and her chest constricted. She stood almost immobile at the corner, her feet in warm slush, reading a monument she had never seen before because she could never bring herself to visit. Didra of Fonte, it read April 10, 1937 to February 23, 1989. Underneath was Beloved Mother because that said it all. Kate bowed her head and her gaze fell upon the rounded monument next to her mother's. A tiny white angel, its cherubic cheeks pitted from the natural and unnatural elements in the air. William Fante, January 11, 1970 to January 11, 1970. Kate's baby brother, stillborn. He had been born severely underweight, his brain underdeveloped. Her mother didn't have the heart for the autopsy. She would tell Kate much later. The cause of death was filling their nose and making their eyes water anyway. Kate felt suddenly stiff as she looked at the miniature tombstone. Her brother's birth and death marked the before and after of her mother's life. Before, her mother had been a vital woman, a natural force, a blonde of the flashiest magnitude, her star brightly set in relief against this dark, grimy mining town. Kate remembered her as laughing, dancing, and making jokes before the baby was born and died. Her mother never recovered, blaming herself, the gases, the mine fire, and the borough council. Her father left them just after. Kate bit her lip, realizing she hadn't brought any flowers for either of them. This cannot be, was still all she could think, and then tears came to her eyes, too persistent to deny. She sniffled, getting a snootful of sulfur dioxide when she heard the sound of a car door slam. A red Toyota was parking in front of the cemetery, and an older man in a gray cabbie hat had gotten out. She wiped her eyes with her hand and heard crunching behind her as the old man made his way up the road, stooped and with difficulty. He seemed to be heading in her direction, and she moved aside to give him room to pass. "Hello," the old man said, giving her a friendly little wave, a pass of gray wool gloves with brown leather palms. "Hello." Kate wiped her eyes again, remembering that people in small towns always said hello. She'd been in Philly too long. When he drew closer, she asked, "Am I in your way?" "No, not at all." The old man smiled pleasantly, his teeth even, and brushed back a sparse fly-away white thatch that had fallen over his lined forehead. His light blue eyes flashed with liveliness behind his bifocals, and he had a bony nose, pink of the tip. "Pardon me, but aren't you dear Dr. Kate?" Kate felt her lips part. "Yes, my, you have your mother's good looks." The man smiled again, offering his handshake. He was tall, almost 6'1" and too thin even in a navy blue down jacket. He wore tan Timberlands with his brown slags. "How nice to meet you finally. My name is Ed Bell." "Hello, Ed," Kate said, though she didn't recognize the name. "Edder was very proud of you. My condolences on this very sad day." "Yes, thank you." Kate felt mystified. "How did you know my mother?" "Edder was an old friend of mine, a very dear friend. We knew each other after you left for college." Kate thought back. "I didn't see you at the funeral. You were too upset to see anything that day." Mr. Pell's eyes strayed to the grave, and Kate watched them move across the headstone, reading it. After a moment, he said, "It's funny. All of fussing and the fighting, the things that matter so much in life, all come to nothing in death." He grew suddenly sad, the crease from his nose to his chin deepening. "Excuse me, would you?" Of course. He shuffled to the head of the grave in the snow, and Kate reached out to support his elbow as he leaned slowly over, and placed a bouquet of pink carnations at the foot of the monument. "Oh, my love dear," he said softly. "What?" Kate had no idea who this man was, and she asked him, and she almost didn't believe the answer. Click on the like button, share this audio with your friends, and also comment on this audio story. Thank you for supporting our channel.